The rift opened above Manhattan at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 months after the Chitauri invasion. No portal, no warning, just a tear in space that bled shadows and crimson light across the night sky before spitting out a single figure who plummeted toward the ruins of a building still waiting for reconstruction. Alucard hit the ground with enough force to crater the pavement, sending cracked spiderwebbing across the street. He lay there for a moment in the center of the impact, his red coat spread around him like a pool of blood, before sitting up with theatrical slowness. "Well," he said to no one in particular, brushing concrete dust from his shoulders. That was new. He stood, surveying his surroundings with eyes that gleamed like captured hellfire behind orange-tinted glasses. The city skyline was familiar. Too familiar. New York. He'd seen it 1,000 times in movies, games, shows. But this wasn't his New York. The air tasted different. Wrong. The ambient energy that suffused. His world, that connection to Hellsing and Integra and the very fabric of his reality, had been severed. For the first time in centuries, Alucard felt alone. A smile slowly spread across his face. "Oh, this is going to be fun." He began walking, his boots clicking against broken pavement as he took in the devastation around him. This part of the city still bore scars from some recent battle. Buildings with massive holes punched through them, scorch marks on the streets, the twisted remains of something that definitely wasn't human technology embedded in a storefront. Alien invasion? He mused, crouching to examine a piece of Chitauri armor. How delightfully derivative. Let me guess. Heroes assembled, saved the day. Everybody learned a valuable lesson about friendship? He picked up the alien medal, watching it crumble to dust in his grip. And they didn't even get the good merchandise out of it. Pathetic. A police siren wailed in the distance. Alucard's head snapped toward it, with predatory interest. Then another sound. Footsteps. Running. Panicked breathing. The heartbeat of prey. 3 men burst around the corner, carrying bags that clinked with the sound of stolen goods. Looters taking advantage of the late hour and the still damaged security systems in this part of town. They didn't see Alucard until they were almost on top of him. "The hell?" one started. Alucard materialized directly in front of them, moving faster than their eyes could track. They stumbled backward, and in the streetlight, they got their first good look at him. Tall, impossibly tall. Red coat that seemed to move independent of the wind, a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow except for those eyes, those terrible, gleaming eyes. "Gentlemen," Alucard's voice was cheerful, almost musical. "Please, don't let me interrupt your evening of petit larceny. Though I have to say, your technique needs work. In my day, we at least had the decency to murder the shopkeeper first. Really committed to the bit, you know." One of the men, braver or more stupid than his companions, pulled a gun, a 9mm, cute. "Back off, freak, or I'll..." Alucard laughed. Not a chuckle, not a giggle. A full, rich laugh that echoed off the broken buildings and seemed to make the shadows deepen around them. "Or you'll what? Shoot me?" He spread his arms wide. "Please, I insist. It's been at least an hour since someone shot me, and I'm starting to feel neglected." The man fired. 3 shots, center mass. The bullets hit Alucard's chest, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the holes began to close, flesh knitting back together as black shadows swirled around the wounds. The bullets fell out, clinking against the pavement. Alucard looked down at his coat. "Ah, you put holes in my favorite coat. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a good tailor these days? Actually, no, wait." He glanced around at the devastated cityscape. "In this economy? Probably pretty easy. Never mind. The three men ran. "Oh, don't be like that," Alucard called after them. "We were just starting to bond." He could have caught them, should have caught them, really. The old Alucard, the one with Integra's voice in his ear reminding him of mission parameters and acceptable collateral damage, would have let them go. These were small fish, irrelevant. But Integra wasn't here. The shadows around Alucard's feet began to writhe and extend, racing across the pavement like living oil. They caught the fleeing men's ankles, and all three went down hard. The shadows dragged them backward, screaming, until they lay at Alucard's feet. "Here's the thing," Alucard said, crouching down so they could see his smile. His very, very wide smile. "I'm in a new city. New universe, actually, if my dimensional theory is correct. And I am bored. So you three are going to help me understand exactly what kind of world I've landed in." He reached out and grabbed the first man by the throat, lifting him effortlessly. "Let's start simple. Heroes. You have heroes here, yes? People in ridiculous costumes who punch bad guys and give speeches about justice?" Avengers," the man choked out. "The Avengers. They'll kill you." "The Avengers." Alucard's eyes lit up. "Oh, like the British spy show. No, wait, that was the Avengers. Different thing. So who've we got? Superman? Batman? Oh, please tell me you have Batman. I have so many questions about his parents." "Iron Man," another man gasped. "Captain America, Thor, the Hulk." "Thor?" Alucard dropped the first man and grabbed the second. "As in the actual Thor? Norse god Thor? The one with the hammer and the long golden locks and the tendency to yell dramatically about honor?" The man nodded frantically. Alucard's smile somehow widened further. "Oh, this universe just became interesting." He released the man, who collapsed to the ground, gasping. All three looters scrambled away, and this time Alucard let them go. They'd served their purpose. Gods. This universe had actual gods running around playing hero. That was new. That was different. That was exactly the kind of challenge he'd been looking for. Alucard threw his head back and laughed at the sky, the sound carrying across the empty streets. "All right, Marvel Universe. Yes, I know that's what you're called. I'm genre savvy enough to recognize the aesthetic. Let's see what you've got. I'm Alucard, no life king, count, vampire, monster. And I am very ready to be entertained." He pulled out his Casul pistol, checking the chamber out of habit more than necessity. 13 bullets. Each one blessed and cursed, paradox ammunition that existed in defiance of logic. They still worked here. Good to know. If you want to see more crossover battles and unexpected universe collisions, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and universe you'd want to see in the comments below. Let's explore the infinite together. Somewhere in the city, alarms began to sound. Security systems finally registering the crater in the street, the gunshots, the screaming. Response protocols activating, heroes being notified. Alucard started walking toward the sound, hands in his pockets, whistling a jaunty tune. In a world of heroes and villains, a monster had arrived who was neither. And he was going to enjoy every second of it. The Triskelion, S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, was never truly quiet. Even at 4 a.m, analysts monitored global threats, satellites tracked anomalies, and somewhere in the bowels of the complex, scientists poked at confiscated alien technology while praying it wouldn't explode. Nick Fury stood in the operations center, one eye fixed on the holographic display showing Manhattan's Lower East Side. The coffee in his hand had gone cold an hour ago, but he hadn't noticed. "Run it again," he said. Agent Hill tapped her tablet, and the footage replayed. Satellite thermal imaging showed the rift opening, a tear in space that registered energy signatures off every chart they had. Then the figure falling, the impact, and then infrared shows his body temperature spiking to over 300 degrees during regeneration, Hill reported, her voice carefully neutral. The bullets passed clean through, but tissue reformation occurred in under 2 seconds. Blood analysis from the scene shows human markers, but with anomalies we've never encountered. Vampire, Fury said flatly. Hill glanced at him. Sir? Old SHIELD files. 80s, early 90s. Project Blade. There were incidents. Someone high up decided to classify the whole thing as local supernatural phenomena and pretend it didn't exist. He set down his coffee. Looks like local just became global. Do we have audio from the scene? Hill nodded and played it. Alucard's voice filled the operations center, theatrical and mocking, explaining to 3 terrified criminals about tailors and parents and something about Batman. He's British, someone muttered from a nearby console. He's insane, someone else corrected. Fury said nothing. He'd seen insane. Loki had been insane. This was something else. This was someone who understood exactly what he was doing and found it hilarious. Where is he now? Lost visual contact 17 minutes ago. He entered the subway system at Canal Street and vanished. We've got facial recognition running citywide, but... Hill paused. Sir, he's not trying to hide. He waved at our satellite before going underground. Fury's jaw tightened. Get me Romanoff and Barton, and wake up Rogers. I want assets in Manhattan within the hour. What about Stark? Stark's in Malibu having what he calls a mental health sabbatical, which means he's probably building another suit and pretending he's fine. Fury pulled up another display, showing Alucard's last known position. No, we handle this quiet. 3 agents, recon only. If this thing is what I think it is, throwing an army at it just gives it more entertainment. Hill tilted her head slightly. Entertainment, sir? You heard him. He's bored. And bored immortals are dangerous. Fury turned to face the operations center. I want full workup on everything supernatural in our files. Vampires, werewolves, demons, anything that goes bump in the night. Cross-reference with dimensional breaches. And get me Strange. Stephen Strange is still in Nepal, sir. He's not... I know he's not the Sorcerer Supreme yet, but he's the best neurosurgeon in the world, and before his accident, he consulted on some of our xenobiology cases. Maybe he remembers something useful. Fury grabbed his coat. I'm going to the detention level. We've got someone down there who might have answers. Sir. But Fury was already walking toward the elevator, leaving Hill to coordinate the response to a threat that had just made the Chitauri invasion look straightforward by comparison. Alucard found the subway tunnels delightfully atmospheric. Dark, damp. The distant sound of trains rumbling through the network. It reminded him of home, of the catacombs beneath the Hellsing estate, of nights spent walking through London's underground while hunting vampires even more pathetic than himself. He'd found a maintenance alcove and settled in, cross-legged, to examine his situation more carefully. The connection to Integra was gone, not severed. Gone, as if it had never existed. That was inconvenient. She was his anchor, his purpose, the one voice that could command him. Without her, he was a weapon without a wielder. Free, he said to the darkness. After 500 years, I'm actually free. He tilted his head. This should feel more triumphant. Why doesn't this feel more triumphant? A rat scurried past his boot. Alucard looked at it, and it froze, sensing the predator in its midst. You get it, don't you? He asked the rat. Purpose. You exist to survive, reproduce, maybe steal some pizza from the surface world. Simple, clean. Me? I exist to... He trailed off. I used to exist to serve, to hunt, to be the monster on a leash so humans could sleep soundly knowing an even bigger monster was protecting them from the little ones. The rat fled. Yeah, I'd run too. His phone, yes, he'd had a phone. Integra insisted he carry one for mission coordination, was dead. Not battery dead, just dead. Whatever frequency it operated on didn't exist here. The technology was similar, but fundamentally incompatible. But the voices in his head, the millions of souls he'd absorbed over the centuries, those remained. A constant whisper of lives lived and ended, memories and skills and personalities all compressed into his being. Somewhere in that cacophony was a World War II radio operator who might remember Morse code, a hacker from the 90s who understood network protocols, and at least 3 people who'd worked for HYDRA in previous lives. Wait. Alucard focused inward, sifting through the soul soup that comprised his existence. There, a man named Marcus, recruited by something called the Strategic Scientific Reserve in 1948, which eventually became SHIELD. He died in 1963. Killed by Alucard during a vampire hunt in Prague, his memories absorbed. Well, Alucard murmured, looks like I have an in. He stood dusting off his coat and checked his weapons. The Kazol and the Jackal, his babies, his beautiful instruments of violence, felt right in his hands. The weight was correct, the balance perfect. Whatever differences existed between universes, physics still governed ballistics. Footsteps echoed in the tunnel. 3 sets. Professional spacing, military precision. They were trying to be quiet, but Alucard had been hunting for longer than their grandparents had been alive. Oh, good, he said cheerfully to the empty air. Company. He melted into the shadows, becoming one with the darkness. Not invisibility, true shadow walking, his body transforming into liquid night that clung to the walls like living ink. 3 figures emerged into the maintenance alcove, sweeping the space with tactical precision. 2 men, 1 woman. The woman was blonde, moving with the controlled grace of someone who'd been trained to kill in a dozen different ways. 1 man was built like a brick wall, bow slung across his back. The other... Alucard reformed behind them, solid once more. Captain America, he said. Wow. The actual, genuine, star-spangled man with a plan. This is like meeting Mickey Mouse, except you actually killed Nazis instead of just selling merchandise. All 3 spun, weapons raised. Steve Rogers held his shield ready. Natasha Romanoff had a pistol aimed at Alucard's head, and Clint Barton had drawn his bow faster than humanly possible. Hands where we can see them, Natasha ordered. Alucard slowly raised his hands, making the gesture as theatrical as possible. Of course, though I should warn you, I have a lot of hands. Like, a lot. It's a whole thing. Very disturbing. You're going to need therapy. Identify yourself, Steve said, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that had probably worked on thousands of soldiers. Alucard. No last name, or rather, my last name is just my first name backward, which is lazy writing if you ask me, but I didn't pick it. He smiled. And you're Captain America, the Black Widow, and Hawkeye. I know because I've absorbed the memories of at least a dozen people who knew about SHIELD's greatest hits. Perks of being a psychic vampire. Stand down, Steve said. We're not here to fight. Really? Because you're doing that whole ready-to-fight stance. Shield up, weapons drawn, looking all heroic and determined. Alucard lowered his hands. But fine. Let's talk. I'm assuming this is the part where you try to recruit me, threaten me, or drop some wisdom about responsibility and power? Natasha's eyes narrowed. You're reading as a significant threat. Dimensional breach, superhuman abilities, and you just assaulted 3 civilians. Assaulted is a strong word. I terrorized them, yes. Shot, no. Killed, absolutely not. Alucard sat down on a pipe, crossing his legs. They were looters, scum. In my world, I'd have drained them dry and added them to my collection. Here, I just scared them straight. You're welcome. Your world? Clint said. You're not from here. Gold star for Hawkeye. Yes, I'm from another dimension. Got yanked through some kind of rift, landed in your lovely post-apocalyptic Manhattan, and now I'm trying to figure out what to do with my existence. He looked at Steve. You'd understand, Captain. Man out of time. Everything you knew gone. Except I'm a man out of universe, and I don't have a noble cause to latch onto. Steve lowered his shield slightly. If you're looking for purpose. Oh, here it comes. We can help. HYDRA has resources. We've dealt with enhanced individuals, aliens, gods. We can find you a place. Alucard laughed. Not the mocking laugh from before, but something colder. A place? How wonderful. Will that place come with a leash, a handler? Maybe some nice suppression technology to make sure the scary vampire doesn't get out of control? That's not... Steve started. Captain, please. I've been on a leash for centuries. I know what help sounds like when it means control. Alucard stood, and the temperature in the tunnel seemed to drop 10 degrees. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to explore this fascinating new world. If I encounter actual threats, and by actual, I mean things that would make your Chitauri look like appetizers, I'll handle them. Because that's what I do. I'm very good at violence. We can't just let you roam free, Natasha said. Can't you? Alucard's smile returned. What exactly are you going to do to stop me? Shoot me? I heal? Imprison me? I walk through shadows. Kill me? He spread his arms. I'm already dead. Have been for 500 years. Death is more like a suggestion at this point. An arrow embedded itself in the wall an inch from Alucard's head. He hadn't seen Clint draw or fire. Nice reflexes, Alucard said appreciatively. But you missed. No, Clint said. I didn't. The arrow exploded, filling the tunnel with blinding light and concussive force. When the dust cleared, Alucard was gone. His voice echoed from deeper, in the tunnel system, already distant. I like you 3. Let's do this again sometime. Maybe over coffee. I'll bring the blood bags. Steve looked at Natasha. Report? He's faster than anything we've encountered, stronger than baseline enhanced. Regeneration that makes extremists look slow. She holstered her weapon. And he's playing with us. Did you tag him? Clint asked. Natasha shook her head. He knew about the tracker and my pistol grip. Grabbed it before we could deploy it. Steve pressed his comm. This is Rogers. Target is non-hostile, but extremely dangerous. Recommend elevated threat status and immediate consultation with Banner on regenerative countermeasures. Fury's voice crackled back. Copy that. Return to base. And Rogers? He's right. We can't force him into anything, but maybe we can give him a reason to cooperate. What kind of reason? The kind with actual monsters for him to fight. I'm pulling files on Project Insight and Hydra's bioweapons programs. If this Alucard wants entertainment, we'll give him targets he can feel good about destroying. Steve frowned, but said nothing. Using one monster to fight others. It was pragmatic. It was necessary. It was exactly what made him uncomfortable about the new world he'd woken up in. Tony Stark's Malibu mansion overlooked the Pacific Ocean, with the kind of view that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Inside, surrounded by holographic displays and half-assembled Iron Man armor components, Tony was doing what he always did when the world got too heavy. He was building. Jarvis, run diagnostics on the Mark 43's repulsor array again. Something's off with the energy distribution. Sir, the readings are within acceptable parameters. Perhaps you should consider that the issue is not with the armor. Tony paused, arc reactor glowing beneath his Black Sabbath t-shirt. Did you just psychoanalyze me? I would never presume, sir. I merely observe that you've run the same diagnostic 17 times in the past hour, each yielding identical results. Yeah, well, Tony's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and grimaced. It's Fury. That can't be good. He swiped to answer, and Nick Fury's face filled the small screen. Stark, we have a situation. When don't you have a situation? Last time you called, it was aliens. Time before that, it was... Wait, it was also aliens. Do you have like a subscription service for extraterrestrial problems? This one's different. Dimensional breach. Manhattan. Vampire. Tony blinked. I'm sorry, did you just say vampire? As in Twilight? Buffy? The sparkly ones or the Bernie ones? The unkillable one. Fury sent a file. Review the footage, then get your ass to New York. The call ended. Tony pulled up the file and watched Alucard's arrival. The confrontation with the looters, the regeneration. His expression shifted from amused to intrigued to deeply concerned. Jarvis, analysis. The subject demonstrates regeneration exceeding any known biological process. The bullet wounds close via what appears to be cellular reconstitution, augmented by an unknown energy signature. His body temperature spikes during healing suggest massive metabolic acceleration. Additionally, the shadow manipulation appears to violate several laws of thermodynamics. So, magic. Or sufficiently advanced biology indistinguishable from magic, sir. Tony replayed the subway footage, watching Alucard toy with 3 of Earth's best operatives. The speed, the casual confidence, the way he seemed to know exactly what they were planning before they did it. He's reading them, Tony murmured. Telepathy, or he's just that good at predicting behavior. Captain Rogers' report indicates the subject mentioned absorbing memories, sir. Psychic vampire was the exact terminology. Tony stood, the arc reactor humming as his system compensated for the sudden movement. Right. So we've got an immortal, telepathic, regenerating vampire from another dimension who thinks he's in a video game. That's not concerning at all. Will you be traveling to New York, sir? Oh, absolutely. But first, I'm making some modifications. Tony gestured, and holographic schematics of the Mark 43 exploded into component views. If this guy can read minds, I need to upgrade the armor's neural shielding. And if he regenerates, I need something that doesn't give him time to heal. May I suggest consulting Dr. Banner? His expertise in gamma radiation and regenerative biology could prove invaluable. Jarvis, you're a genius. An artificial genius, but still. Tony was already pulling up communication protocols. Get me Banner, and prep the suit for transport. If we're fighting Dracula's edgy cousin, I'm bringing the good toys. Bruce Banner was in Kolkata when Fury's message arrived. He'd been helping at a free clinic, using his medical expertise to treat patients who couldn't afford proper health care. It was good work, meaningful work. The kind that let him forget, for a few hours, about the other guys sleeping beneath his skin. His phone buzzed during a particularly delicate suturing job. He ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Dr. Banner, the nurse assisting him said gently, perhaps you should check that. He finished, the suture, cleaned up, and stepped outside into the humid evening air. 7 missed calls from Fury, 3 from Tony, 1 text from Natasha that just said, "Code green, not you, something else." He called Fury back. Banner, thank God. What happened? Is it the Hulk? Did someone... It's not you. It's something new. I'm sending files. Fury's voice was tight. I need your brain on this one. Regeneration that makes your green friend look slow. Biological anomaly that doesn't match anything in our databases. Bruce downloaded the files as Fury talked, his scientific mind already cataloging the impossibilities. This can't be right. The cellular reconstruction rate would require... He stopped. Where did this subject come from? Another dimension. Of course it did. Bruce pinched the bridge of his nose. Nick, I'm a nuclear physicist and a biochemist. I'm not an expert in interdimensional biology. No, but you're the world's leading expert in gamma-induced regeneration, and this thing heals faster than you do. I need to know if there's a way to slow it down, stop it, or at least contain it. Bruce watched the footage of Alucard regenerating from bullet wounds. The tissue reformation was elegant, almost beautiful in its efficiency. Wrong universe or not, the biology was fascinating. I'll need samples, blood, tissue, anything you can get. Working on it. How fast can you get to New York? I'm not coming to New York. Send me the samples, and I'll analyze them remotely. Banner. I said no, Nick. You want my expertise? You get it via email. You want the Hulk? You're going to have to drag me there in chains. And we both know how that would end. There was a long pause. Fine. But stay on call. If this goes sideways, I'm going to need all hands on deck. Bruce ended the call and looked at the files again. The scientific part of his brain was already racing through hypotheses. Theories about how regeneration on this scale could function. But another part, the part that understood what it meant to be a monster, recognized something in Alucard's eyes during that subway footage. This wasn't just a dangerous threat. This was someone who'd been the most dangerous thing in his world for so long that he'd forgotten how to be anything else. Bruce knew that feeling intimately. Alucard emerged from the subway at Grand Central Terminal just as dawn began painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The morning commute was starting, thousands of humans flowing through the station like blood through veins. He stood in the middle of the main concourse, letting the crowd part around him like water around a stone. No one looked directly at him. A subtle psychic suggestion that made him unremarkable, forgettable. Just another tall man in a red coat. The ceiling stretched above him, painted with constellations. Alucard tilted his head back and smiled. A new world, he murmured. New rules, new players. He lowered his gaze, watching the humans rush past. New food. The hunger was there, always there. A constant whisper that had been his companion for 5 centuries. In his world, with Integra's voice in his ear and a mission to focus on, he could ignore it, could channel it into violence against acceptable targets. Here, without that anchor. No, he thought. Not yet. Not until I understand the rules. Killing in his world had been sanctioned, controlled, part of a larger structure. Killing here would make him just another monster to be hunted. And while that had a certain appeal, being hunted by gods and heroes sounded fun, it would also limit his options. Excuse me. Alucard looked down. A young woman, maybe 25, holding a phone with a cracked screen. She was looking directly at him, which meant she'd broken through his psychic suggestion. Interesting. You look lost, she said. Do you need directions? He studied her. Brown eyes. Tired. The kind of tired that came from working 2 jobs and still struggling to make rent. But she'd stopped to help a stranger anyway. I'm not lost, he said carefully. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. But thank you for asking. She nodded and started to turn away, then paused. That's a great coat, by the way. Very dramatic. Dramatic is my middle name. Well, no, my middle name is actually, you know what? It's complicated. He smiled, keeping his teeth hidden. Have a pleasant day." She walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Alucard watched her go, something unfamiliar stirring in the ocean of souls he carried. When was the last time someone had shown him kindness without knowing what he was? "Sentiment," he muttered. "How disgustingly human of me." His phone, the dead one from his world, suddenly buzzed in his pocket. Impossible. But Alucard pulled it out anyway and found the screen glowing with a message in text that shifted between languages. "Anomaly detected. Mystic alert. Kamar Taj requests immediate audience. Coordinates attached." "Well," Alucard said, pocketing the phone. "Someone's hacked my dead phone to send me a mystical text message. That's either very impressive or very concerning." A second message appeared. "We know what you are. We know why you're here. Come willingly or be brought unwillingly." Threatening me. I like that. Shows initiative. He looked up at the constellation ceiling one more time. "All right, wizards. Let's see what you've got." He walked toward the exit, his shadow stretching longer than it should have in the morning light. Behind him, in the crowd, 3 different SHIELD agents tried and failed to maintain surveillance on a target who knew exactly where every camera, phone, and concealed weapon was. In a Quinjet approaching Manhattan, Steve Rogers reviewed tactical options for containment. In Malibu, Tony Stark put the finishing touches on neural shielded armor plating. In Kolkata, Bruce Banner studied regeneration rates and wondered what it would take to make something that healed that fast actually stay down. And in a place between places, where stone walls held back the chaos of infinite dimensions, the Ancient One watched through mystical sight as a thread that shouldn't exist wove itself into the tapestry of their reality. "He seeks purpose," she said to Wong, who stood beside her. "He's dangerous," Wong replied. "All powerful things are dangerous. The question is whether his danger can be directed." The Ancient One traced symbols in the air, following Alucard's path through the city, or whether he will become the very chaos we work to prevent. Should we banish him? Can we? The Ancient One smiled slightly. He exists outside the natural order. The dimensional breach that brought him here wasn't random, it was deliberate. Someone wanted him in this universe. Who? That, the Ancient One said, is what concerns me most. In the city below, Alucard stopped at a street vendor and bought a cup of coffee with money he'd pulled from one of the looter's pockets. He took a sip, made a face, and dumped it in a trash can. "This universe's coffee is an abomination," he declared to no one. That alone might be grounds for invasion. He continued walking, whistling a tune from a war 500 years past, while the city woke up around him. Earth's heroes prepared their strategies, and somewhere in the shadows of SHIELD, HYDRA began making plans of their own. The criminal underworld of New York had evolved since the Chitauri invasion. Alien technology flooded the black market. Energy weapons, armor fragments, propulsion systems that didn't quite explode when you looked at them wrong. Where there was technology, there was profit. And where there was profit, there were men willing to kill for it. Wilson Fisk hadn't become the kingpin by being sentimental. He'd built his empire on understanding leverage, power, and the simple truth that everyone could be bought or broken. When reports reached him of a strange figure terrorizing his street-level operations, he did what he always did. He gathered information, assessed the threat, and prepared to eliminate it. His penthouse office overlooked the city from its highest point. Expensive art lined the walls, legitimate purchases made through legitimate channels, because Wilson Fisk was a legitimate businessman. The fact that those channels were funded by drugs, weapons, and human trafficking was irrelevant. Business was business. "Tell me again," he said to the man standing before his desk. James Wesley, his assistant and the closest thing Fisk had to a friend, consulted his tablet. 3 separate incidents in the past 12 hours. Lower East Side, Greenwich Village, and Hell's Kitchen. In each case, a man in a red coat appeared, confronted your operations, and... He paused. Sir, the reports are inconsistent. Inconsistent how? The Greenwich Village crew claims he walked through walls. Hell's Kitchen says he disappeared into shadows. The Lower East Side survivors, and there are only 2, insist he turned into some kind of monster with eyes everywhere. Wesley looked up. They're terrified, sir. These are hardened criminals, and they're terrified. Fisk steepled his fingers. Superhuman? Possibly. But SHIELD hasn't made any moves to contain him. Neither have the Avengers, beyond initial contact. Either he's not considered a priority, or he's not. Playing by their rules. Fisk stood and walked to the window. The Avengers concern themselves with alien invasions and gods. SHIELD monitors threats to national security. A man terrorizing criminals in New York? That's vigilante work, small time, which means he's either a fool or he has his own agenda. What would you like me to do, sir? Fisk considered. The smart move would be to avoid this new player, let SHIELD handle it, focus on consolidating power while everyone else was distracted. But the smart move wasn't always the right move. If this man was disrupting operations, he needed to be addressed. Reach out to our contacts in the NYPD. I want everything they have: security footage, witness statements, forensics from the scenes. Fisk turned from the window. And Wesley, prepare a meeting. If this man is targeting criminals, perhaps he and I can reach an understanding. And if he can't be reasoned with, then we'll discover what it takes to kill something that doesn't die easily. Fisk smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. I didn't build this empire by being afraid of monsters, Wesley. Sometimes you have to become a bigger one. Alucard found Hell's Kitchen at midday, and it reminded him of home. Not the clean, tourist-friendly parts of London, but the real London, the alleys where poverty and desperation created their own ecosystem. Here, in this pocket of New York, he could feel the weight of suffering like a physical presence. He liked it. A drug deal was happening in an alley between a Chinese restaurant and a pawn shop. 3 buyers, 2 sellers, enough product to destroy a few dozen lives. The sellers were armed with Chitauri energy pistols, cheap knockoffs that had a 50% chance of exploding in your hand, but the other 50% would punch a hole through concrete. Alucard dropped from the fire escape above them, landing in a crouch that cracked the pavement. All 5 men spun, weapons rising, and Alucard held up a hand. Gentlemen, before you shoot me, and you will, because everyone always shoots me, let me ask a question. He stood slowly, hands in his coat pockets. Do you know what happens when you flood a market with alien technology? You destabilize the power structure. Weapons that used to take skill to use now just require a trigger finger. Suddenly, every 2-bit criminal thinks they're Tony Stark. One of the buyers fired. The Chitauri pistol discharged with a sound like tearing metal, and a bolt of blue energy hit Alucard square in the chest. His coat smoked, the flesh beneath charred. Alucard looked down at the wound, then back up at the shooter. Congratulations. That actually hurt. The wound began closing, flesh knitting back together in a grotesque display of regeneration. Now let me show you what real power looks like. He drew the castle faster than human eyes could track and fired once. The blessed bullet caught the shooter in the shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him into the alley wall. Not a kill shot. Alucard wasn't feeling murderous today. The remaining 4 opened fire. Conventional weapons mixed with one more Chitauri pistol. Bullets tore through Alucard's coat, his chest, his arms. The energy bolt took off part of his shoulder. He kept walking forward. "See, the thing about regeneration," he said conversationally, "is that pain is temporary. Very, very temporary. Which means I can do things like this." His arm shot out, elongating impossibly, shadows wrapping around the limb as it stretched 15 feet to grab one of the sellers by the throat. He lifted the man off the ground and slammed him into the opposite wall hard enough to crack brick, without worrying about the consequences. The other 3 ran. Alucard let them go, releasing the man he'd grabbed. The seller dropped to the ground, gasping, staring up at the monster wearing a man's face. "Tell your boss," Alucard said, crouching down, "that Hell's Kitchen has new management. Anyone dealing Chitauri tech? Anyone preying on the weak? Anyone thinking they're safe in the shadows?" His smile widened. "I live in the shadows, and I'm very territorial." He stood and walked away, leaving the seller scrambling for his phone. By sunset, word had spread through the criminal underground. A new player had entered the game, and he wasn't playing by anyone's rules. Matt Murdock heard about the incidents before the police did. His city, because Hell's Kitchen was his city, whether he wore the mask or not, was being invaded by something that moved through shadows and couldn't be killed. He stood on a rooftop in his devil suit, listening. The city was a symphony of sound to his enhanced senses. Heartbeats and footsteps, conversations and crimes, the constant rhythm of 8 million lives. And somewhere in that symphony, there was a wrong note. A heartbeat that didn't beat quite right. Slower than human, more controlled. Moving through the kitchen with purpose that suggested hunting rather than walking. Matt tracked the sound, following it from rooftop to rooftop. He could hear the whispers in the streets below, the criminals scattering from certain areas, the unusual absence of activity in neighborhoods usually teeming with it. Whatever this thing was, it was cleaning house. Matt found him outside a warehouse where weapons deals usually went down. The man in the red coat stood in a pool of lamplight, looking directly at Matt's position, even though there was no way he should have known Matt was there. "Daredevil," the man called out. "The man without fear. I've heard about you. Blind lawyer by day, ninja vigilante by night. Very Bruce Wayne, except with more Catholic guilt and fewer billions." Matt dropped to the ground, billy clubs in hand. Up close, he could hear everything wrong with this man. The heartbeat that was more suggestion than rhythm. The breathing that wasn't quite necessary. The smell of blood and gunpowder and something older, darker. "You've been terrorizing criminals all day," Matt said. "Terrorizing implies they didn't deserve it. I prefer educating." The man tilted his head. "You can't see me, but you know exactly what I am, don't you? Your senses are screaming at you that I'm wrong." Matt's grip tightened on his clubs. "I know you're dangerous. I know you're killing people. Actually, I haven't killed anyone. Yet. I've been remarkably restrained." The man spread his arms. "But if you want to fight, I'm game. It's been a while since I sparred with someone who relies on skill instead of power. Come on, Matt. Let's dance." Matt moved. Years of training with stick, experience fighting hand ninjas and enhanced opponents, all flowing into a perfect combination of strikes aimed at pressure points, joints, anywhere that should disable a human opponent. Alucard blocked the first 3 strikes, dodged the 4th, and caught the 5th. His hand wrapped around Matt's wrist with grip strength that could crush bone. "You're good," Alucard said. "Really good. But you're fighting human opponents with human weaknesses." He yanked Matt forward and drove a knee into his stomach. "I don't have those." Matt gasped. the wind knocked out of him, but recovered instantly. He used Alucard's grip as leverage, swinging his body up and kicking at the vampire's head. The kick connected, snapping Alucard's head to the side. Alucard laughed and released Matt, who rolled away and came up in a defensive stance. "Oh, you're fun. Again!" They traded blows in the lamplight, Matt using every technique he knew to find a weakness. Alucard barely defending while clearly enjoying himself. Every hit Matt landed. Solid shots that should have broken ribs, dislocated shoulders, healed within seconds. "You can't win this," Alucard said, catching Matt's club mid-swing. "I've been doing this for 500 years. You've been at it, what, 5? 10? He twisted, and Matt had to release the club or have his arm broken. "But I respect the effort. You're protecting your city. That's noble." "This isn't your city," Matt growled. "It's not yours either. You're just the guy in the mask who thinks he can save it." Alucard tossed the club back to Matt. "Here's some free advice, Devilman. Pick your battles. I'm not your enemy. We want the same thing. Cleaning up the streets, punishing the guilty. The difference is, I'm actually capable of doing it. By becoming the thing you're fighting against." "I've always been the thing I'm fighting against. I'm a monster hunting monsters. The difference is, I'm honest about it." Alucard turned to walk away, then paused. "There's a warehouse 3 blocks south. Human trafficking operation. 20 victims, 10 guards. You want to save people? Go there. I'll handle the alien tech dealers." Matt's enhanced hearing told him Alucard wasn't lying. Every heartbeat, every breath pattern suggested truth. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I like you. You're fighting a war you can't win with weapons that barely work, and you do it anyway. That's either bravery or stupidity, and I appreciate both." Alucard's shadow began stretching, lengthening unnaturally. "Go save your people, Daredevil. I have criminals to educate." He melted into the shadows and vanished, leaving Matt alone in the lamplight with a choice to make. Matt stood there for 5 seconds, warring with himself. Then he ran south, toward the warehouse, praying Alucard was telling the truth. In his penthouse, Wilson Fisk received a call from his man in the NYPD. "Sir, we've got reports of a confrontation between the individual in the red coat and the vigilante known as Daredevil. Outcome: no clear victor. They separated. But sir, our surveillance picked up their conversation. The subject in red told Daredevil about one of your operations, the human trafficking warehouse on West 47th. Fisk's jaw tightened. "Clear it out, now." "Sir, if we move the merchandise now..." "I don't care about the merchandise. Clear it out and burn the building. This man isn't just disrupting operations, he's actively hunting us." Fisk stood, walking to his weapons cabinet. "And he's using heroes to do it." "What are your orders, sir?" Fisk pulled out a modified Chitauri energy rifle, one of the few that actually worked reliably. "Prepare the enforcers, enhanced weapons only, and contact our friends in the government. Tell them we have a potential asset situation, something even HYDRA might be interested in containing." He hung up and looked out at the city. Somewhere in those streets, a monster was playing hero. And Wilson Fisk had learned long ago that the best way to deal with a monster was to turn everyone else against it. All he needed was the right pressure point. And everyone had a pressure point. The coordinates led Alucard to a brownstone in Greenwich Village that looked aggressively normal. Flower boxes in the windows, a fresh coat of paint. The kind of building where you'd expect to find a nice elderly couple who baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. Alucard stood across the street, hands in his pockets, and smiled. 177A Bleecker Street, he murmured. Home of the Sorcerer Supreme, guardian of Earth against mystical threats, and apparently someone with a very active spam filter for their magical text messages. The building's wards were immediately apparent to his supernatural senses, layers of protection woven through reality itself, defense mechanisms that would fry most hostile entities before they reached the front door. But Alucard wasn't most entities. He walked up to the door and knocked. The door opened, revealing a man in traditional robes who looked distinctly unimpressed. Wong, Alucard's stolen memories supplied. Librarian, warrior, and the Ancient One's most trusted student. "You're late," Wong said. "I stopped for coffee. Then I threw it away because your universe's coffee is terrible. Then I terrorized some criminals. Then I fought Daredevil. Busy morning." Alucard smiled. "May I come in? Or do you need to invite me? I can never remember the rules." "You're not a traditional vampire. The invitation rule doesn't apply." Wong stepped aside. "But the Ancient One requests you follow proper protocols. Remove your weapons." Alucard looked down at the Casal and Jackal holstered at his sides. These are basically security blankets. I promise not to shoot anyone unless they're really annoying. Remove your weapons." Fine. Alucard unbuckled his gun belt and handed it to Wong. "But if something attacks and I have to fight it with my bare hands, I'm going to be very put out." Wong accepted the weapons, handling them with care that suggested he knew exactly what they were. "Follow me." The interior of the Sanctum Sanctorum was larger than the exterior suggested. Spatial manipulation on a scale that made Alucard whistle appreciatively. Artifacts lined the walls, each one radiating power that would have been dangerous in the wrong hands. Shelves of books contained knowledge that predated human civilization. "Nice place," Alucard said. "Very mysterious wizard tower aesthetic. I approve." They descended stairs that seemed to go deeper than the building's foundation should allow, eventually reaching a circular chamber lit by floating candles. In the center, sitting in lotus position on a simple mat, was the Ancient One. She looked young, too young to be called ancient, with a serene expression that Alucard immediately distrusted. People who looked that peaceful usually had enough power to back it up. "Alucard," she said, opening her eyes. "Welcome to Earth 19999. That's this universe's designation. Nice name. Someone in multiversal accounting has no imagination." He bowed with theatrical flourish. "Ancient One, master of the mystic arts, defender of reality, and apparently the person responsible for hijacking my dead phone. A simple spell. Your device carried enough residual energy from your universe to allow communication." She gestured to a mat across from her. "Please, sit." "I prefer to stand. Sitting is vulnerable. Vulnerable is boring." "Then stand." The Ancient One smiled slightly. "You've been in our universe for approximately 16 hours. In that time, you've confronted HYDRA operatives, terrorized organized crime, fought one of our more persistent vigilantes, and somehow managed to avoid killing anyone. Impressive restraint for someone known as the No-Life King. I'm on my best behavior, trying to make a good first impression." Alucard tilted his head. "Though I notice you know who I am. That's interesting. Did you peek into my soul? Read my memories? Watch me through your wizard crystal ball? I observed the dimensional breach that brought you here. I saw the circumstances of your arrival and the nature of your existence." The Ancient One stood, and despite being significantly shorter than Alucard, somehow gave the impression of looking down at him. "You are an anomaly, a being whose very existence violates the natural order of this universe. Story of my life. Well, unlife. You know what I mean." The question, the Ancient One continued, is whether you are a threat to be eliminated or variable to be managed. The temperature in the room dropped. Alucard's smile widened. Eliminated. I like that word. It's so clinical, so much better than killed, which we both know you can't do. He took a step forward, and Wang's hand moved to a weapon. I've been killed thousands of times. Bullets, blades, fire, holy water, stakes through the heart, decapitation. I've experienced them all. Death is more like a speed bump at this point. There are fates worse than death, the Ancient One said calmly. Are there? Please, enlighten me. I'm fascinated by theoretical suffering. The mirror dimension. A pocket reality where you could spend eternity without ever affecting the prime universe. No victims, no purpose. Just endless existence in a prison of reflected nothing. Alucard considered this. That does sound unpleasant. But here's the thing about prisons. They only work if you can't escape. And I've spent 500 years learning how to escape from impossible situations. He spread his arms. But let's not get adversarial. You invited me here. That suggests negotiation, not elimination. The Ancient One walked to a shelf and pulled down an ancient tome. Tell me, Alucard, in your universe, what were you? A monster on a leash. The Hellsing organization's attack dog. I hunted vampires, ghouls, and anything else that threatened England's sovereignty. I served Integra Hellsing, head of the organization, and through her, I served the crown. He paused. I was very good at it. And now? Now I'm a monster, without a leash. Which is either freedom or purposelessness, depending on how philosophical you want to get. The Ancient One opened the tome, revealing pages covered in symbols that hurt to look at. The dimensional rift that brought you here was not natural. Someone deliberately pulled you from your universe into ours. That got Alucard's attention. Someone? Who? That I do not know. The signature was obscured, deliberately hidden. But the intent was clear, to deposit you in New York City at that specific time for a specific purpose. Maybe someone's a fan, wanted to meet their favorite vampire. Or someone wanted to destabilize our reality by introducing a variable that shouldn't exist. The Ancient One closed the tome. You are powerful, Alucard. More powerful than most beings in this universe. Your regeneration rivals that of gods. Your soul absorption violates natural law. Your very presence creates ripples in the fabric of reality. You're making me blush. You are also alone. Separated from everything you knew, everyone you served, without purpose or direction. She met his eyes. That makes you dangerous, not because of what you are, but because of what you might become. Alucard's smile faded. And what might I become? A force of chaos, a being who acts purely for entertainment, without regard for consequence. In your universe, you had constraints. Integra, the organization, a mission. Here you have none of those things. You are unlimited potential with no direction. So, what do you want? To give me a new leash? Make me your attack dog? No. I want to offer you a choice. The Ancient One gestured, and a vision appeared in the air between them. Images of Earth, of threats lurking in shadows, of dimensional barriers holding back horrors. This universe has guardians. The Avengers protect against physical threats. HYDRA monitors global security. And we, the masters of the mystic arts, defend against supernatural and dimensional dangers. Let me guess, you want me to join your little wizard club? I want you to understand what's at stake. You come from a universe where vampires were rare, isolated threats. Here, there are entire dimensions of beings that would make your ghouls look harmless. The dark dimension, the Cancerverse, realms where concepts like death and sanity cease to have meaning. Alucard's interest was genuinely piqued now. Go on. These realms press against our reality constantly. We hold them back, but the barriers weaken. New threats emerge. And with your arrival, those barriers have become more fragile. The Ancient One let the vision fade. Whether intentional or not, you are a crack in the armor. Either you help us reinforce it, or you become another threat we must contain. That's not really a choice. That's work for us or we'll imprison you. It's an observation of reality. You cannot remain neutral. Your actions will have consequences. The question is whether those consequences serve creation or destruction. Alucard was silent for a long moment, processing. In his world, the choice had been made for him centuries ago: serve or be destroyed. Here, the same choice was being presented with different window dressing. "What if I told you I don't care about saving the world?" he said quietly. "What if I just want to be entertained?" "Then you would be lying." The Ancient One smiled. "I've seen your soul, Alucard. All those lives you've consumed, all those memories and personalities swirling inside you. You tell yourself you're a monster, but monsters don't show restraint. Monsters don't warn heroes about trafficking operations. Monsters don't question their purpose. Maybe I'm just a bored monster. Or maybe you're afraid that without someone to serve, you'll discover you were never really a monster at all. Just a man who became something terrible and convinced himself he enjoyed it." Alucard's expression darkened. "Don't psychoanalyze me, wizard. You don't know what I am. I know you were human once. I know you chose to become a vampire rather than die. I know you've spent 5 centuries trying to find someone strong enough to end your existence, because some part of you still wants the release you denied yourself." The Ancient One's voice was gentle. "And I know that arriving in a new universe, you could choose to be anything. But instead, you're doing exactly what you did before. Hunting those you consider evil, terrorizing criminals, seeking purpose through violence. It's what I'm good at. It's what you're comfortable with. There's a difference." Wong cleared his throat. "Ancient One, the Council is concerned about allowing this entity to remain free. The Council is always concerned. That's their function." She turned back to Alucard. "I'm not asking you to join us. Not yet. But I am asking you to consider the consequences of your actions. This universe has balance. Upset that balance, and forces beyond even your comprehension will take notice." "What kind of forces?" "The kind that make your Millennium organization look like children playing with toys." The Ancient One opened a portal with a gesture, revealing a glimpse of something vast and terrible writhing in dimensional space. The kind that exists to unmake reality itself. Alucard stared at the portal, and for the first time since arriving, felt something like excitement. "Now, that looks entertaining." The Ancient One closed the portal. "They are not entertainment. They are extinction. And if you draw their attention to Earth through reckless behavior, every living thing on this planet will pay the price. So, play nice or cosmic horrors eat everyone." "Got it." Alucard turned to leave, then paused. "Out of curiosity, how many of these cosmic horrors have you fought?" "More than I can count. And you're still here, still fighting, still holding back the darkness." He looked back at her. "That must get exhausting." "It does. Which is why we recruit allies when we can." "I'm not your ally. Not yet. But you're not my enemy either. That's a start." The Ancient One nodded to Wong, who handed Alucard his weapons back. "Walk carefully. No life, King." This universe may seem similar to yours, but the stakes are infinitely higher. Alucard holstered his guns and walked toward the stairs. At the threshold, he stopped. In my world, I serve Integra because she's strong enough to command me. In this world, who's strong enough? Perhaps, the Ancient One said. You should ask what's worth serving, rather than who's strong enough to command. Alucard laughed, but it lacked his usual mocking edge. Philosophers. I hate philosophers. He climbed the stairs and left the sanctum, emerging onto Bleecker Street as the sun began its descent. The meeting had been interesting, concerning. The Ancient One had touched on truths he'd spent centuries avoiding. But she was wrong about one thing. He wasn't afraid of discovering he wasn't a monster. He was afraid of discovering he'd been a monster all along, and everything else, the service, the restraint, the loyalty, had just been a comfortable lie. His phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Mr. Alucard, I believe we have mutual interests. Wilson Fisk requests your presence for dinner. Attached is an address. Come alone. Wesley Alucard read the message and smiled. The Kingpin. Now, this should be interesting. The restaurant was exclusive. The kind of place where reservations required months of waiting and a net worth that could buy a small country. Wilson Fisk had rented the entire establishment for the evening, ensuring absolute privacy for his meeting with the monster currently terrorizing New York's underworld. Alucard arrived precisely on time, which surprised him. Punctuality had never been his strong suit. But something about Fisk's invitation intrigued him. The audacity of a crime lord inviting a supernatural predator to dinner suggested either stupidity or confidence. And stupid men didn't become kingpins. James Wesley greeted him at the door, impeccably dressed and wearing an expression that suggested he'd rather be literally anywhere else. Mr. Alucard, thank you for accepting Mr. Fisk's invitation. Please, just Alucard. Mr. makes me sound like a substitute teacher. He glanced around the empty restaurant. Nice place, very last meal before execution vibes. Appreciate the ambiance. Wesley's jaw tightened slightly. If you'll follow me, Mr. Fisk is waiting in the private dining room. They walked through the restaurant, past tables set with pristine white linens and crystal that probably cost more than most people's rent. Alucard noted the security, discreet but present. Armed men positioned at every exit, wearing suits that didn't quite hide the bulges of weapons. Some conventional firearms, but he could sense the Chitauri energy signatures as well. Your boss really went all out, Alucard said. It's adorable, like a kitten puffing itself up to look bigger. Mr. Fisk respects strength. He's simply ensuring mutual understanding. Understanding that if I wanted to kill everyone here, I could do it before your finger reached the panic button in your pocket. But sure, let's call it understanding. Wesley said nothing, but his heartbeat accelerated slightly. Fear. Good. Alucard preferred when people were honest about their terror. The Harm private dining room was opulent. Expensive art on the walls, a table that could seat 12 but was set for 2, and at the head of it, Wilson Fisk. The man was massive. Not enhanced, just naturally large, with muscle hidden under layers of expensive tailoring. He stood as Alucard entered, offering a hand that could crush skulls. Alucard, thank you for coming. Alucard shook the offered hand, noting the strength in Fisk's grip. Strong for a human, impressive even, but humans were so fragile. Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime, built an empire on suffering and exploitation while pretending to be a legitimate businessman. Alucard sat without being invited. I read about you. Well, I absorbed the memories of someone who knew about you. same difference. Fisk sat as well, gesturing for Wesley to leave. The assistant hesitated, then departed, closing the door behind him. "You've been busy?" Fisk said, pouring wine into 2 glasses. 16 hours in my city, and you've disrupted more operations than the Avengers have in 6 months. Your city? Alucard accepted the wine glass, sniffing it appreciatively. That's interesting. See, I met another man who called it his city, Daredevil. He seemed pretty invested in the whole protecting Hell's Kitchen thing. Murdoch is an idealist playing dress-up. I'm a businessman maintaining order. Fisk sipped his wine. There's a difference. Is there? You both use violence to enforce your vision of how things should be. You both operate outside the law. You both think you know what's best for the people who live here. Alucard swirled his wine. The only difference is, Murdoch feels bad about it. You sound like you admire him. I admire anyone willing to fight a losing battle. It's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I find both qualities entertaining. Alucard drank the wine in one gulp. But let's not pretend this is a social call. You invited me here for a reason. So what do you want, Fisk? Wilson Fisk set down his glass with deliberate care. I want to understand you. You appear in my city with powers that defy explanation. You target my operations specifically. You work with vigilantes, and yet you've killed no one. He leaned forward. Why? Maybe I'm on a diet, cutting back on the whole draining people dry thing. You're not killing because you're playing a game, testing boundaries, seeing how this new world works before you commit to a strategy. Fisk's eyes narrowed. I recognize the behavior. I did the same thing when I was building my empire. Small moves first, test the opposition, learn the rules before breaking them. Alucard smiled. You're smarter than you look. I didn't survive this long by underestimating threats. So let me be direct. You're disrupting business, scaring my people, drawing attention from law enforcement and SHIELD. That's bad for everyone. Everyone except the victims of your business. Victims. Fisk said the word like it tasted foul. You think I'm the villain in this story? I provide structure, order. In my territories, the crime is organized, controlled, predictable. Remove me, and chaos fills the vacuum. Worse players, more violence, more suffering. The classic necessary evil argument. I've heard it before. Alucard stood and walked to one of the paintings on the wall. Abstract, expensive, meaningless. Let me tell you a story, Wilson. In my world, I served an organization that hunted monsters. We were sanctioned by the government. Legal, legitimate. And I killed hundreds, maybe thousands of vampires and ghouls over the centuries. So, you understand the necessity of violence in maintaining order? No. I understand that I was a monster given permission to indulge my nature as long as I aimed it at acceptable targets. Alucard turned. The difference is, I never pretended to be anything else. You, though? You dress up exploitation as order. Call suffering business. Convince yourself you're providing a service. Fisk's expression hardened. Then why are you here? If you see me as just another monster, why not kill me? Because I'm curious. Alucard returned to his seat. You invited a supernatural predator to dinner. That's either arrogance or you have something you think I want. So which is it? Fisk smiled. Not a warm smile, but one of recognition. I'm offering you what you've been searching for since you arrived. Purpose. I'm listening. You're powerful, unstoppable by conventional means, but you're also aimless. You terrorize criminals because it's familiar, but it's not fulfilling. You met with the Ancient One. Yes, I know about that. I have sources. and she couldn't offer you what you need. Fisk pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. I can. Alucard picked up the tablet. Files, dozens of them. Criminal enterprises, yes, but also something else. Human trafficking networks, child exploitation rings, terrorist cells, the kind of evil that transcended mere criminality and entered the realm of genuine monstrosity. These are your competitors? Alucard asked. These are animals that I've been unable to touch. Organizations too decentralized for conventional law enforcement. Too well connected for SHIELD to act without political complications. Too dangerous for vigilantes like Murdoch. Fisk leaned back. But for someone like you, these are afternoon entertainment? Alucard scrolled through the files, his expression unreadable. A sex trafficking ring operating out of Eastern Europe. A cult in South America performing human sacrifices. A weapons dealer in Asia selling to terrorist organizations. Each file meticulously detailed, complete with locations, leadership structures, and evidence. You want me to be your attack dog. I want to point you at targets that deserve destruction. You get entertainment and purpose. I get rid of competition and threats to my interests. Everyone wins. Except this is a deal with the devil. Once I start working for you, I'm complicit in everything you do. You're already complicit. You exist in this world. You participate in its systems. Neutrality is a myth. Fisk poured more wine. I'm simply offering you efficiency. You want to hunt monsters? I'll provide the monsters. You want to feel like you're serving a purpose? I'll give you targets that are genuinely evil. All I ask in return is that you stay out of my legitimate business interests. Alucard set down the tablet. And if I refuse? Then you continue as you are, aimless, disruptive, until SHIELD or the sorcerers or someone else decides you're too much of a liability and finds a way to contain you. Fisk's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. I'm not threatening you. I'm observing reality. You're powerful, but you're one being in a universe full of powers you don't understand. Eventually, you'll make a mistake, and they'll lock you away somewhere even you can't escape. Confident words from a man made of meat. Confident words from a man who survived in a world of gods and monsters by being smarter than them. Fisk stood. Think about it. You have 48 hours. After that, I'll assume you've chosen chaos over purpose, and I'll adjust my strategies accordingly. Meaning you'll try to kill me. Meaning I'll make you irrelevant. There are always other players, other powers. If you won't work with me, I'll find someone who will. Fisk walked to the door, then paused. You said you served someone in your world. Integra Hellsing. What made her worthy of your service? Alucard was quiet for a moment. She was strong, uncompromising. She commanded me not because she could destroy me, but because she refused to fear me. She looked at a monster and saw a weapon that could be wielded. Then we understand each other. Fisk opened the door. Wesley will show you out. The tablet is yours to keep. Review the files. See if any of those monsters are worth hunting. Alucard stood, pocketing the tablet. He walked toward the door, then stopped beside Fisk. You're dangerous, Wilson. Not because of your power, but because you're smart enough to make terrible things sound reasonable. He smiled. I respect that. But understand something. I'm not a weapon. I'm not a tool. And I don't serve criminals, no matter how well tailored their suits are. Then what will you serve? Alucard considered the question. I'll let you know when I figure it out. He left the restaurant, aware of the armed men tracking his movement, aware of the cameras and the surveillance, and the fact that Fisk had prepared multiple contingencies for this meeting. The kingpin was thorough. prepared. But preparation only worked when you understood what you were preparing for. And Fisk had no idea what Alucard truly was. Outside, the night air was cool. Alucard pulled out the tablet and scrolled through the files again. Fisk was right about one thing. These were genuine monsters. Organizations that destroyed lives for profit, for ideology, for entertainment. The kind of targets Integra would have authorized without hesitation. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Observation. You have been approached by Wilson Fisk. Recommendation. Decline his offer. Hydra has better resources. A friend. Alucard stared at the message. Hydra. The organization that had infiltrated HYDRA, that operated in shadows, that sought control through fear and manipulation. Everyone wants a piece of the vampire, he muttered. I'm flattered, truly. A third message arrived, this time from a number that registered as Stark Industries. Hey, Dracula's angry cousin. Heard you're the new guy in town? Swing by Stark Tower tomorrow. Let's chat about not destroying my city. Tony Stark. Alucard laughed. The billionaire genius approaching him directly. That was bold. And then a fourth message, this one from HYDRA. Alucard. Fury here. We need to talk. Avengers Tower. Noon tomorrow. Non-negotiable. Everyone wants to talk, Alucard said to the knight. Everyone has an offer. Everyone thinks they can control the monster. He looked up at the sky, at the stars that were the same as his world, but somehow different, and felt the weight of choices pressing down on him. Fisk wanted a weapon. Hydra wanted an asset. Stark wanted containment. Fury wanted control. The Ancient One wanted purpose. What did Alucard want? He thought of Integra, of the weight of her command, of the clarity that came from having someone strong enough to direct him, to give his violence meaning. Without her, he was just a monster in a world full of heroes. And monsters, he was learning, had a very short shelf life in the Marvel universe. Alucard didn't sleep. He never really needed to. So he spent the night wandering New York's rooftops, watching the city breathe. From his vantage point, he could see everything. The late-night traffic, the crime happening in alleys, the heroes making their rounds. Daredevil was out, handling a mugging in Hell's Kitchen. Spider-Man, yes, there was a Spider-Man here, was web-slinging through Queens, stopping a convenience store robbery. A world of heroes, each one trying to hold back the darkness with their bare hands. It was almost sweet. His contemplation was interrupted by a sound that didn't belong, the telltale hum of repulsor technology. Alucard turned as Iron Man descended from the sky, landing on the rooftop with theatrical flair that rivaled Alucard's own. The armor was red and gold, sleek and powerful, lit from within by the arc reactor's glow. The faceplate lifted, revealing Tony Stark's face. Couldn't wait until noon? Alucard asked. Sleep is for people without crippling anxiety and genius-level intellects. Tony's armor retracted partially, the chest piece and helmet folding away while keeping the gauntlets and boots active. Besides, I figured you'd be up. Vampires don't sleep, right? Or is that a myth? I can sleep, I just choose not to. Dreams are boring when you've lived 500 years. Alucard gestured to the armor. That's impressive. Miniaturized arc reactor, powered exoskeleton, weapons systems that probably violate several international treaties. You built this in a cave, I assume? A cave in Afghanistan, actually, with a box of scraps. Tony walked to the roof's edge, looking out at the city. Jarvis has been monitoring you since you arrived. Thermal imaging, satellite tracking, analyzing your every move. Want to know what he concluded? That I'm devastatingly attractive and a joy to be around? That you're bored, Powerful, dangerous, and completely, utterly bored. Tony turned. I know the feeling. After Afghanistan, after building the suit, after fighting terrorists and alien invasions, there's this moment where you realize you're capable of so much and the world feels small. Alucard tilted his head. You're trying to relate to me. That's cute. I'm trying to understand you. Big difference. Tony's repulsors hummed slightly, a subtle threat. See, here's my problem. You're a walking weapon of mass destruction with no clear allegiances, no oversight, and a concerning tendency to show up where crime is happening. You're either going to become an asset or a threat. I'd like to know which before I have to get creative with containment strategies. Containment, everyone's favorite word. Alucard smiled. Let me guess. You've already designed 17 different ways to kill me. Sonic weapons to disrupt my cellular structure. UV radiation bombardment. Some kind of mystical binding technology you're developing with consultation from the sorcerers. Maybe a nice containment unit that'll keep me in stasis for a few thousand years. Tony's expression barely flickered. 19, actually. And they're not to kill you. They're to stop you if necessary. There's a difference. Is there? When you're designing weapons, does the intent really matter or just the result? Philosophy. Great. I should have brought Banner for this conversation. Tony sat on the roof's edge, dangling his legs over the drop. Look, I'm not here to threaten you or recruit you or whatever Fury's planning. I'm here because I'm curious. You could be conquering this city right now. You've got the power. But instead, you're terrorizing drug dealers and having meetings with crime lords and sorcerers. Why? Alucard was silent for a moment, considering. Tony Stark was dangerous in a different way than Fisk or the Ancient One. He was dangerous because he genuinely wanted to understand, and understanding could be more threatening than any weapon. In my world, Alucard said slowly, I was created to be the ultimate weapon, a vampire so powerful that other vampires feared me. I was supposed to be unstoppable, unbeatable, the final answer to any supernatural threat. Sounds lonely. It was, is. The problem with being the strongest is that everything else becomes trivial. Fights are boring, challenges are disappointing. You spend centuries looking for someone, anyone, who can actually threaten you, and you never find them. He looked at Tony. And then you wake up in a new universe, and you think, maybe here, maybe in a world with gods and super soldiers and geniuses in flying armor, I'll finally find what I'm looking for. A worthy opponent. An ending. Alucard's smile faded. I chose to become a vampire rather than die as a human. I was arrogant enough to think immortality was a gift. 500 years later, I realized it was a curse. I can't die, not permanently. Every time someone kills me, I regenerate. Every time I face death, it rejects me. Tony was quiet, his genius intellect processing this admission. You're suicidal. I'm realistic. I'm a monster that's outlived its purpose. In my world, I had Integra. Her commands gave my existence meaning. Without her, he trailed off. I'm just violence looking for direction. Then find a new direction. Tony stood. Look, I get it. I've been there. After New York, after seeing what's out there in the universe, I had nightmares. Still have them. The feeling that no matter what I build, it won't be enough. That I'm just one man in a suit trying to fight gods and aliens and things I can't even understand. How inspirational. I'm not done. What I learned is that the feeling doesn't go away. The fear, the inadequacy, the sense that you're not enough. It's always there. But you push through it. You find people who can fight beside you. You build something bigger than yourself. Tony's repulsors powered up. You're powerful, Alucard. Maybe the most powerful thing I've scanned since Thor. But power without purpose is just destruction waiting to happen. And you're offering purpose? I'm offering perspective. The Avengers, we're not perfect. We're a genius with anxiety, a living legend with PTSD, a rage monster, a god with family issues, and 2 spies with enough red in their ledgers to paint a city. We're broken people trying to do something good. Tony rose into the air slightly. You want to be broken with purpose, or broken alone? Your choice. He flew off, leaving Alucard alone on the rooftop once more. Broken with purpose, Alucard murmured, as if it's that simple. But something in Tony's words resonated. The Avengers were damaged, flawed, dangerous in their own ways. Yet they'd chosen to direct that danger towards something constructive. Could he do the same? His thoughts were interrupted by a flash of light and the distinctive boom of Bifrost energy. Alucard turned as rainbow light coalesced into a figure. Tall, armored, carrying a hammer that hummed with barely contained power. Thor, god of thunder, stood on the rooftop, looking at Alucard with eyes that had seen millennia. Alucard, the no-life king. Thor's voice was deep, resonant. I bring word from Asgard. Let me guess. Your dad wants to have a chat about the dimensional anomaly disrupting his precious 9 realms? My father knows of your arrival. The Bifrost detected the breach, and Heimdall has been watching your actions. Thor stepped forward, Mjolnir resting casually in his hand. I come not as a threat, but as one warrior to another, to understand what you truly are. What I am. I'm a vampire, an undead monster, a being that exists in defiance of natural law. Your mythology probably has a few of us. Draugr, vampires, things that refuse to stay dead. Asgard has legends of many creatures. The Draugr, yes. The Vetter, beings that walk the line between life and death. Thor's expression was thoughtful. But you are different. You carry within you the souls of thousands. I can sense them, crying out from within your being. You are not merely undead. You are a prison of souls. Alucard's smile returned, but it was colder now. Poetic. Did you come all the way from Asgard to analyze me? Or do you have a point? My point is that Asgard recognizes your power. In my realm, you would be considered a threat worthy of the Einherjar's attention, perhaps even worthy of facing Asgard's greatest warriors. Thor spun Mjolnir casually. But you have not acted as a threat. You hunt the wicked. You show restraint. You seek purpose rather than conquest. Don't tell me. You're here to recruit me too. Does everyone in this universe run on the same script? I am here to offer you knowledge. Thor gestured, and holographic images appeared in the air. Not technology, but magic. Images of realms beyond Earth. You spoke with the Ancient One about cosmic threats. Let me show you what truly lurks beyond your understanding. The images showed horrors that made Millennium look like children playing soldier, beings that existed across dimensions, entities that consumed entire worlds, armies of darkness that numbered in the billions. The 9 realms face constant threats, Thor continued. Asgard stands as a bulwark against these forces. We have fought for millennia to keep the realms safe, but we grow weary. Odin ages, our warriors fall, and new threats emerge that challenge even our might. So Asgard needs help. That's your pitch? Asgard offers partnership, not servitude, not control, but alliance among warriors. Thor's expression was serious. You seek worthy opponents? The enemies of Asgard would test even your considerable abilities. You seek purpose? Help us defend the realms. You seek an end? Thor met Alucard's eyes. Face the enemies of Asgard, and perhaps you will finally find the death you seek. Alucard considered this, an alliance with gods, fighting cosmic threats, testing himself against enemies that could actually challenge him. It was tempting. More tempting than anything Fisk or HYDRA had offered. And what does Asgard ask in return? Your word that you will not threaten Midgard, that your power will be directed toward enemies of the realms, not their people. Thor lowered Mjolnir. I do not ask you to serve. I ask you to fight beside us as an equal, to stand against the darkness as warriors have since time immemorial. An equal. That's a dangerous word, Thor. It implies I'm at your level. Are you not? Thor smiled. I have faced many powerful beings. Frost giants, fire demons, the Destroyer. Each time I emerged victorious through strength and worthiness. You, however, he gestured at Alucard. You are something new. Something that challenges my understanding of power. I would very much like to test myself against you properly, not as enemies, but as warriors measuring their strength. Alucard's grin widened. Now that sounds entertaining. Then let us have a bout. Here now, no holding back. Let me see what a being who cannot die is truly capable of. And I shall show you why Asgard has stood for millennia. The air crackled with tension. Two immortal beings, both powerful beyond mortal comprehension, about to clash not out of hatred, but out of mutual respect and curiosity. One condition, Alucard said. When this is over, regardless of outcome, you tell me honestly, am I strong enough to stand beside Asgard's warriors? Or am I just another monster to be contained? Thor's expression grew serious. You have my word as a son of Odin. Then let's dance, Thunder God. Alucard drew his castle and fired. The blessed bullet screamed through the air faster than sound, aimed directly at Thor's heart. Thor raised Mjolnir, and lightning erupted from the hammer, intercepting the bullet mid-flight. The explosion of divine energy and cursed ammunition lit up the night sky. And in that moment, every hero, villain, and organization in New York suddenly became aware that something significant was happening on that rooftop. The rooftop exploded into chaos as two forces of nature collided. Thor swung Mjolnir, and the hammer moved like a meteor. Ancient Asgardian craftsmanship meeting divine will. Alucard dodged, his body becoming shadows that the hammer passed through harmlessly, reforming 10 feet away with both guns drawn. Neat trick, Thor called out, spinning Mjolnir to redirect his momentum. But shadows cannot hide from lightning. He thrust the hammer skyward, and the clouds above responded instantly. Lightning lanced down in a column of pure electricity that would have vaporized a normal building. Alucard stood in the center of it, letting millions of volts course through his body. When the lightning faded, Alucard was smoking, his coat singed, his skin blackened and cracked. He looked down at himself and laughed. That tickled. The burned flesh sloughed off, revealing perfect skin beneath as his regeneration kicked into overdrive. Do it again. I want to see if I can taste the ozone this time. Thor grinned. A warrior's grin that showed genuine joy in finding a worthy challenge. You are either incredibly brave or incredibly mad. Why not both? Alucard fired both guns, alternating between the castle and the jackal. Blessed bullets and explosive rounds filled the air, each shot precisely aimed at joints, weak points in armor, gaps in Thor's defense. Thor spun Mjolnir in a defensive pattern, the hammer moving so fast it became a shield of solid metal, deflecting bullets in all directions. One round got through, catching Thor in the shoulder. The god grunted, more from surprise than pain, and looked at the wound. Blood, actual godly blood, seeped through the armor. Well struck. Thor's eyes literally began to glow with power. I have not bled in combat for some time. You honor me with your skill." He hurled Mjolnir. The hammer crossed the distance between them faster than Alucard could track, slamming into his chest with the force of a meteor. Alucard felt ribs shatter, organs rupture. His spine crack as he was launched backward off the rooftop. He fell 15 stories, crashed through a fire escape, and hit the alley below hard enough to crater the pavement. Thor descended on lightning, landing beside the crater. A worthy effort, but Alucard's hand shot up from the rubble and grabbed Thor's ankle. But what, Thunder God? He yanked, pulling Thor off balance, and erupted from the crater in a mass of shadows and fury. His arm elongated, becoming a tendril of darkness that wrapped around Thor's throat. With his other hand, he drew the jackal and pressed it against Thor's temple. "In my world," Alucard hissed, his voice layered with the voices of thousands, "I am the thing that makes monsters afraid of the dark." He pulled the trigger. The explosion at point-blank range should have obliterated Thor's head. Instead, the Asgardian's durability held, barely. The bullet cracked his skull, drew blood, but didn't penetrate. Thor roared, grabbed the shadow tendril, and pulled. His divine strength literally ripped the shadow away from Alucard's body, tearing off the vampire's arm in the process. Thor spun, building momentum, and threw Alucard through 3 buildings. Alucard crashed through concrete and steel, finally coming to rest in what used to be someone's apartment. The resident, an elderly woman, stared at the monster embedded in her wall. "Apologies," Alucard said, regenerating his arm from the shoulder down. "Construction accident. You should probably evacuate." She ran. Thor burst through the same wall, and they collided in the apartment, trading blows that shattered furniture and cracked load-bearing walls. Thor's strength was immense, godly. But Alucard's regeneration meant he could take risks no sane fighter would. He let Thor break his arms to get close enough to bite, his fangs sinking into the Asgardian's neck. Thor's blood tasted like lightning and starlight and something ancient beyond comprehension. For a moment, Alucard felt power surge through him, actual divine power, before Thor headbutted him hard enough to crack his skull and send him staggering back. "You dare drink from a god?" Thor wiped blood from his neck, eyes blazing. "You taste like expensive wine and bad decisions." Alucard's skull reformed with wet cracks. "I approve." The building couldn't take any more. It began to collapse around them, tons of concrete and steel falling. Thor summoned Mjolnir, which had been circling the fight, and used it to create an updraft that carried him clear. Alucard simply let the building fall on him. When Thor landed on the street, watching the rubble settle, he waited. 5 seconds passed, then 10. The rubble exploded outward as Alucard emerged, covered in dust and blood, laughing like a madman. "This is the most fun I've had in decades." Around them, police sirens wailed. News helicopters circled at a safe distance. And on nearby rooftops, other heroes had gathered to watch. Captain America with his shield ready, Iron Man hovering in his armor, Black Widow with a sniper rifle trained on Alucard's head. "We need to stop," Thor said, though he looked reluctant. "We're endangering civilians." "So we take it somewhere else." Alucard's eyes gleamed. "Come on, Thunder God. You wanted to test me. Let's finish this properly." Thor looked at the destruction around them, then at Alucard. For a moment, he seemed to be calculating. Then he raised Mjolnir skyward. "Heimdall, open the Bifrost!" Rainbow light erupted around them both. Alucard felt reality twist as he was pulled through space itself, yanked across the cosmos by Asgardian magic that tasted like the space between stars. They materialized on a barren plain of dark rock under an alien sky. No buildings, no people, just endless wasteland stretching to a horizon lit by 3 moons. Vanaheim, Thor explained, breathing heavily. An uninhabited region. Here we can fight without restraint. Alucard looked around at the alien landscape and smiled wider. Now you're speaking my language. What followed was less a fight and more a natural disaster. Thor called down lightning that turned sand to glass. Alucard responded with shadow constructs. Massive hands and tentacles formed from living darkness that tried to drag the thunder god into an abyss. Thor shattered them with Mjolnir, then used the hammer to fly at supersonic speeds, building momentum for strikes that could shatter mountains. Each hit from Mjolnir destroyed Alucard's body. Each time, he regenerated faster, learning, adapting. He began to anticipate Thor's patterns, started dodging instead of tanking hits, used his supernatural speed to land strikes in the microseconds between Thor's attacks. They fought for what felt like hours. The landscape around them was transformed. Craters the size of football fields, glass sculptures created by lightning, shadows that refused to fade even under 3 moons' light. Finally, both warriors stood, facing each other across a ruined plain, breathing heavily, or, in Alucard's case, approximating breathing. "You are," Thor panted. "Incredible. I have not been pushed this hard since facing the Destroyer." "You're not bad yourself." Alucard's coat was in tatters, his body showing wounds that were healing slower now. "But we could do this forever. You're too durable to kill, and I literally can't die. Where does that leave us?" Thor planted Mjolnir in the ground and leaned on it. "It leaves us at an impasse. But also," he looked at Alucard with new respect, "with understanding. You asked if you were strong enough to stand beside Asgard's warriors. Alucard, you are strong enough to stand among the greatest warriors in all the 9 realms." Something shifted in Alucard's expression. "You mean that?" "I do not speak false praise. You are a warrior of exceptional skill and power. More than that, you fight with joy. Not malice or hatred, but genuine enjoyment of combat. That is the mark of a true warrior." Thor pulled Mjolnir free. "If you wished it, Asgard would welcome you. Not as a servant or weapon, but as an ally worthy of respect." Alucard was silent, processing this. Respect from a god. Recognition from warriors who had fought for millennia. It was unexpected. What does that mean, practically speaking? It means when threats emerge that challenge the 9 realms, Asgard would call upon you as an ally, not command you as a subordinate. It means you would have access to Asgard's knowledge, its resources, its training grounds. Thor smiled. "And it means you would have warriors who could provide the challenge you seek. Asgard has many who would relish testing themselves against you. And in return, you help defend the realms when called. You do not threaten Midgard or its people. And you stand against the true darkness, the beings that would unmake reality itself." Alucard considered this. It was similar to what the Ancient One offered, but different. The sorcerers wanted him contained, controlled, directed. Thor was offering partnership, recognition, respect. "I need to think about it. Of course, this is not a decision to make lightly." Thor raised Mjolnir. "Heimdall, return us." The Bifrost opened again, pulling them back to Earth. They materialized on the same rooftop where they'd started, now surrounded by Avengers and SHIELD agents, all armed and ready for conflict. Nick Fury stood at the front, one eye fixed on Alucard. "That was quite a show. Want to explain what the hell just happened?" "Thor and I were having a conversation," Alucard said. "It got physical. We worked through some things. You destroyed 4 buildings. Only 3.5. The 4th one was already structurally compromised." Alucard dusted off his coat. "But sure, We can call it property damage if it makes you feel better. Steve Rogers stepped forward, shield ready. This can't continue. You're too dangerous to operate without oversight. Oversight. Alucard's good humor faded slightly. There's that word again. Tell me, Captain, what gives you the right to oversee me? Your government? Your organization? The fact that you're considered heroes? The fact that we're trying to protect people? So am I. I've been hunting criminals, stopping trafficking rings, removing threats that your oversight couldn't touch. Alucard's voice carried an edge now. The difference is, I don't pretend I'm doing it for noble reasons. I'm doing it because I'm bored and it's entertaining. But the result is the same. Bad people stop doing bad things. By terrorizing them, Natasha said quietly. By being something worse than they are. Yes, exactly. Because sometimes that's what it takes. Alucard looked at each of them. You people operate under rules, laws, oversight. You can't torture information out of criminals. You can't kill without trial. You can't make people afraid to commit crimes because that would be unethical. But I can. I'm the monster you point at other monsters. The difference is I don't need anyone's permission. That's what makes you dangerous, Fury said. Power without accountability. And what about Stark? Billionaire with privately owned weapons of mass destruction. Or Thor? Literal god who could level a city if he felt like it. Or Banner? Walking apocalypse that you keep around because he's useful. Alucard smiled coldly. The only difference between me and them is they've agreed to play by your rules, and I haven't. Yet. The word yet hung in the air. Tony stepped forward, his faceplate closing. Yet. So you're considering it. I'm considering a lot of things. Fisk wants me as an attack dog. HYDRA, yes, I know about HYDRA, don't look so surprised, wants me as an asset. The Ancient One wants me as a mystic defender. Thor wants me as an ally of Asgard. Everyone wants a piece of the vampire. He looked directly at Fury. What do you want, Director? Fury was silent for a moment, his one eye assessing, calculating. I want to know if you're going to be a problem I need to solve or a solution I can work with. Honest, I appreciate that. Alucard's smile returned, but it was thoughtful now. How about this? I'll make you all a deal. Give me 1 week, 7 days. I'll operate in New York, continue doing what I've been doing, hunting criminals, removing threats, being generally terrifying to the underworld. If, at the end of that week, I've proven I can be trusted not to massacre civilians or start World War III, we talk about next steps. If I can't, he shrugged, then you bring out whatever containment measures you've been developing and try your best. The Avengers exchanged glances. It wasn't an ideal solution, but it was better than an outright conflict. Fury nodded slowly. 1 week. But you step 1 inch over the line. You'll know, because I'll make sure it's very loud and obvious. Alucard turned to Thor. Thank you for the fight. And the offer. I'll think about it. Thor inclined his head. You fought with honor, Alucard. Whatever path you choose, I hope we face battles together rather than against each other. Alucard walked to the roof's edge, then paused. One more thing. Fury, you've got a HYDRA problem. Like a serious HYDRA problem. They're everywhere in SHIELD. Your security clearance can't be trusted, your agents can't be trusted, and whatever Project Insight is that they keep thinking about when I read their minds, it's very bad. Fury's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eye. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious problem. But hey, you've got a week to figure out if I'm lying or not. Alucard fell backward off the roof, dropping into shadows that swallowed him whole. When the heroes rushed to the edge, he was gone. In the silence that followed, Steve turned to Fury. Is there any truth to what he said about Hydra? Fury's jaw tightened. If there is, we're going to find out. And if he's telling the truth? He looked at the gathered heroes. Then we've got bigger problems than one vampire. The week that followed became known in HYDRA internal reports as the Crimson Audit. Alucard operated with surgical precision. Each night, another criminal enterprise simply stopped. A Hydra weapons facility in Queens discovered their entire security force impaled on their own equipment, with a note that read, "Closed for renovations. Management eaten." A human trafficking ring in Brooklyn woke to find their leaders drained of blood and their victims freed, guided to safe houses by shadowy figures that vanished when police arrived. He wasn't subtle, he wasn't trying to be, but he also wasn't killing indiscriminately. Every target was verified, every victim accounted for, every piece of evidence carefully preserved for law enforcement. It was violence with purpose, terror with direction. And it was working. Crime in New York dropped 17% in 5 days. Not because criminals stopped committing crimes, but because they fled to other cities, terrified of the monster, hunting them. Matt Murdock found himself with less work to do. The drug dealers were gone. The weapons smugglers had vanished. Hell's Kitchen was experiencing the closest thing to peace it had seen in years. It made him deeply uncomfortable. "He's doing our job," Matt said to Foggy Nelson over coffee in their cramped office. "Isn't that good?" Foggy asked. "Crime down, people safer. You can actually sleep occasionally." "He's doing it through fear, through being something worse than the criminals." Matt set down his cup. "That's not justice. That's tyranny dressed up as vigilantism. Says the guy who beats up criminals in a devil costume. I don't torture them. I don't drain their blood. I don't leave them traumatized for life. No, you just break their bones and hang them from buildings for the cops to find." Foggy raised an eyebrow. "Matt, I love you, but you're not exactly Mr. Gentle Approach yourself." Matt fell silent. Foggy wasn't wrong. The line between Daredevil's violence and Alucard's was a matter of degree, not kind. But degree mattered, didn't it? Tony Stark was having the same philosophical crisis in his Malibu workshop, surrounded by holographic displays showing Alucard's nightly activities. "Jarvis, analysis. Is he actually making the city safer?" "By empirical measures, yes, sir. Crime rates have decreased significantly. Emergency room visits related to gang violence are down 23%. Missing persons reports related to trafficking have resulted in more recoveries than the previous 6 months combined. But the methodology is creating psychological trauma in the criminal population. Several arrested individuals have experienced complete psychological breaks. The phrase, 'the red-eyed devil,' appears in 78% of witness statements." Tony leaned back in his chair. "So he's effective but traumatizing. Great. That's not morally complicated at all." "Sir, if I may offer observation, your methods with the Iron Man armor have also been described as traumatizing by certain parties. That's different. I'm using technology, not supernatural horror. The distinction may be semantic from the target's perspective, sir." Tony rubbed his face. "I hate when you're right. Which is always. I hate that I programmed you to always be right." A notification appeared, Bruce Banner calling via secure line. "Bruce, tell me you've found something that'll help me sleep at night." Bruce's face appeared on the screen, looking tired. "I analyzed the blood samples SHIELD collected from the fight scene. Tony, his regeneration isn't biological, it's ontological." "Speak English, Bruce." "He doesn't heal because his cells regenerate. He heals because reality itself refuses to accept his death. His existence is written into the universe at a fundamental level. Killing him would require rewriting reality. Bruce pulled up molecular scans. The souls he's absorbed aren't metaphorical. They're literally contained in his being, creating a kind of quantum immortality. As long as one soul remains, he can reconstruct his body from nothing. Tony stared at the data. So he's literally unkillable. By conventional means, yes. Maybe Strange could banish him mystically, or Thor could hit him hard enough to scatter his essence across dimensions, but killing him in any traditional sense? Impossible. That's terrifying. It gets worse. I detected residual energy signatures matching Thor's divine power in his blood. Tony, he drank from Thor during their fight and absorbed some of that power. Not permanently, but enough to show that he can temporarily gain abilities from supernatural beings he consumes. Tony was very quiet. So he's unkillable, can steal powers, and is currently operating unsupervised in the most populated city in America. When you put it that way, yes. Why does every week have to have an existential crisis? Can't we just have normal problems like tax evasion or bad press? Nick Fury was having similar thoughts in his office, reviewing reports from agents conducting surveillance on Alucard. He's not trying to hide, Maria Hill said, standing before Fury's desk. Every operation he hits, he leaves evidence for us to find. Detailed records, financial trails, names of everyone involved. It's like he's doing our job for us. That's because he is. Fury pulled up a holographic map showing Alucard's targets. See the pattern? Every hit correlates to known Hydra operations or assets. He's systematically dismantling their infrastructure. Hill leaned forward, studying the map. He's targeting Hydra specifically. Not just Hydra, anyone connected to them. Corrupt officials, shell companies, safe houses. Fury highlighted a location. This warehouse, we've been watching it for months, but couldn't move without political clearance. He walked in, gathered evidence, left it on our doorstep with a bow. So he's helping us? He's forcing our hand, making us look incompetent by comparison. Fury closed the map. But I can't argue with results. We've arrested more Hydra affiliates this week than in the previous year. What about the accusations he made? About Hydra infiltrating SHIELD? Fury's expression darkened. I've been running quiet investigations, cross-referencing personnel files, monitoring communications, looking for patterns. And Hill? He looked at her directly. I'm finding things, inconsistencies, hidden connections. He wasn't lying. Hill's face went pale. How deep does it go? Deep enough that I don't know who to trust. Which is why you're going to assemble a team, people we can verify aren't compromised. We're going to root out this infection before Project Insight launches. What is Project Insight? That's what worries me. It's a SHIELD initiative I approved, but now I'm seeing modifications I didn't authorize. Enhanced targeting protocols, elimination parameters. Fury stood. Alucard called it very bad. I'm starting to think he was understating. In the Triskelion's detention level, behind walls designed to hold enhanced individuals, Alexander Pierce received a visitor. The man in the suit was unremarkable. Middle management easily overlooked. Perfect Hydra material. He's becoming a problem, the agent said quietly. Pierce nodded. The vampire? Yes. He's destroyed 6 of our operational cells and exposed dozens of assets. Unacceptable. Should we activate the Winter Soldier? No. The soldier is for targets we understand. This Alucard is an unknown quantity. We need a different approach. Pierce pulled out a tablet showing Alucard's profile. He wants purpose, direction. Everyone wants something. We just need to figure out what he wants and offer it to him. And if he refuses, then we ensure he becomes enough of a threat that SHIELD is forced to eliminate him. Fury's already on edge. One more incident, one civilian casualty that can be tied to the vampire, and the world. Security Council will authorize whatever it takes to bring him down. Pierce smiled coldly. Sometimes the best way to handle a weapon is to aim it at your enemies, then destroy it before it turns on you. Alucard was aware of all of this. The surveillance, the investigations, the conspiracies forming around him. He could read it in the minds of the agents watching him, sense it in the whispers of the souls he'd absorbed who'd once worked for these organizations. He sat on the edge of Stark Tower's roof, a location he'd chosen specifically because Tony's security couldn't keep him out. And he enjoyed watching the billionaire's frustration, looking out at the city. New York at night was beautiful. Millions of lights, millions of lives, all going about their business unaware of the monsters walking among them. You're thinking too loud. Alucard didn't turn. He'd heard the widow approach, felt her presence like a whisper of danger. Natasha Romanoff joined him at the roof's edge, sitting a careful distance away. "Surveillance duty?" he asked. "Personal curiosity. You've been operating for 5 days without killing anyone. That takes restraint." She studied him. "Why?" "Because killing is easy. Any monster can kill. Showing restraint? That's harder. You're trying to prove something." "Maybe I'm trying to prove I can be more than what I was designed to be." He glanced at her. "You'd understand that. Trained from childhood to be a weapon. Told your entire life that you're a tool, not a person. And then one day, someone gives you a choice. Keep being the weapon, or try being something else." Natasha was quiet. "How did you know about my past?" "I can read surface thoughts. Plus, I absorbed the memories of a KGB agent in the 1980s who knew about the Red Room program." He smiled slightly. "Your instructors were bastards, by the way. Very creative bastards, but bastards nonetheless. They're all dead now. Good. They deserved worse than death. But I'll accept. Dead as a compromise." They sat in silence for a moment. "You know they're planning contingencies," Natasha said. "Ways to stop you if necessary." "Of course they are. They'd be idiots not to. I'm a walking apocalypse with no clear allegiances." He pulled out a cigarette, a habit he'd picked up decades ago, and lit it with a thought. "Want to know the funny thing? I could solve their Hydra problem. I could read every mind in SHIELD, identify every agent, eliminate them all in a single night. Clean, efficient, thorough. But you won't. But I won't. Because that would make me the villain in their story, the monster who took control. And I'm trying very hard not to be that." He took a drag. "It's exhausting, having power and choosing not to use it. Welcome to being a hero. I'm not a hero. Heroes are self-sacrificing idiots who put everyone else first. I'm a monster trying to figure out if I can be something more than hunger and violence." He flicked ash into the wind. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Because from where I'm sitting, you're doing hero work, saving people, stopping bad guys, showing restraint when you don't have to. I'm doing it because I'm bored and it's entertaining. That's not heroism. Maybe heroism is just doing the right thing regardless of motivation." Natasha stood. "The week's almost up. Fury's going to want an answer. What are you going to tell him?" Alucard considered. "That I'm still figuring it out. That I need more time. That I'm not ready to—" His words cut off as every instinct screamed danger. He stood instantly, shadows gathering around him, eyes scanning the skyline. "What is it?" Natasha had her weapons drawn. "Something's coming. Something that makes my teeth itch." He looked toward the bay. Something old, something powerful, something that smells like death and ambition. In the distance, at the harbor, a container ship was docking. Inside its cargo hold, sealed in specially designed coffins, were 24 vampires, true vampires, turned by ancient bloodlines, sent by Hydra specifically to eliminate the anomaly that was disrupting their plans. And leading them was something worse, a being that predated even Alucard. A vampire lord from this universe's own dark history, awakened and pointed at the no-life king like a missile. Alucard felt his smile return, wide and genuine. "Oh, this is going to be fun." The harbor erupted into chaos as the container ship's cargo bay doors blew open. 24 coffins spilled onto the dock, each one shattering to release vampires that hadn't walked the earth in decades. These weren't the pathetic ghouls or fledglings from Alucard's world. These were genuine creatures of the night, ancient and hungry, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. And at their center, stepping from a coffin 3 times the size of the others, was Varna, the first vampire, the progenitor, a being so old that humanity's first civilizations had been built on stories of his terror. 12 feet tall, wrapped in ancient armor forged from metals that no longer existed, with eyes that held the weight of millennia. Alucard appeared on the dock in a swirl of shadows, Natasha right behind him, already calling for backup on her comm. "Varna," Alucard said, recognition flowing from the absorbed memories of this world's supernatural beings. The sorcerer supreme of Atlantis who chose vampirism over death. I've heard stories, and I have heard of you, anomaly. Varna's voice was like grinding stone, ancient and terrible. A creature from beyond this reality, disrupting the natural order. Hydra has paid well for your destruction, but I would have done this for free. You are an insult to vampiric tradition. Tradition? You mean hiding in sewers, preying on the weak, being knocked around by heroes with wooden stakes? Alucard laughed. Yeah, I can see why you'd be upset. I make you all look incompetent. The other vampires hissed, moving to surround him. Alucard counted them, 24, each one radiating power that would have made them apex predators in his world. Here, they were Hydra's attempt to fight supernatural with supernatural. Last chance, Alucard said, drawing his guns. Walk away. Go back to whatever crypt you crawled out of. Because if we do this, I'm not stopping until every last one of you is ash. Bold words for one so young. Varna gestured, and the vampires attacked. What followed was a massacre. Alucard moved through them like death incarnate, each shot from his guns dropping a vampire. The Kasul's blessed bullets burned through their hearts, and the Jackal's explosive rounds removed heads. But these vampires were ancient. They didn't die easily. Headless bodies kept fighting. Vampires with holes in their chests regenerated. So Alucard adapted. His shadows erupted outward, becoming spears and blades that impaled multiple vampires simultaneously. He grabbed one by the throat, bit down, and drank. The vampire's essence flooded into him. Power, memories, abilities, before the body crumbled to dust. You devour your own kind? Varna sounded almost impressed. Perhaps you are not so different from us after all. I'm nothing like you. Alucard's form began to shift, growing larger, more monstrous. Eyes appeared across his body, mouths full of fangs, limbs that bent in directions that violated geometry. You hide. You lurk. You're parasites. I'm an apex predator. He became a swarm, thousands of bats, each one with his consciousness, each one attacking from a different angle. The vampires tried to fight back, but Alucard was everywhere at once, biting, draining, consuming. Above, an explosion of light announced Thor's arrival via Bifrost. Iron Man descended from the sky, repulsors charging. Captain America came via motorcycle, shield ready. The Avengers had answered Natasha's call. "Bloody hell," Tony muttered, taking in the scene. "That's a lot of vampires." "These are not mere fledglings," Thor said, Mjolnir crackling with electricity. "I sense ancient power. These creatures have walked the earth since before Asgard last visited Midgard." Steve assessed the battlefield with tactical precision. "Alucard's handling most of them, but that big one—" "Varna," Natasha supplied. "According to SHYELD's supernatural database, he's the first vampire, created by dark magic in Atlantis over 20,000 years ago." "So, Tuesday," Tony said. "Okay, team. Vampires. What do we know? Sunlight, stakes, holy water?" "Won't work on these," Natasha said. "They're too old, too powerful." "Then we improvise." Tony targeted 3 vampires with micro-missiles. "Jarvis, UV spectrum maximum intensity." The suit's chest beam fired, not with repulsor energy but concentrated ultraviolet light. The vampires caught in it shrieked, their skin smoking and blistering. Not enough to kill them, but enough to weaken them. Thor swung Mjolnir, and lightning carved through 2 vampires, reducing them to ash. Fire and lightning seem effective. Steve threw his shield, the vibranium disc decapitating a vampire mid-lunge at Natasha. She caught the shield's return, used it to block another vampire's claws, then drove a silver knife into its heart. The vampire staggered, but didn't fall. "They're regenerating too fast," Steve called out. Alucard reformed from his swarm state, now holding 5 vampire hearts in his elongated claws. "Then don't give them time to regenerate." He crushed the hearts, and 5 vampires exploded into ash simultaneously. Varna watched this display with calculating eyes. "Impressive. But you face the first of our kind, anomaly. I have forgotten more about vampiric power than you will ever learn." The ancient vampire raised his hands, and the very shadows responded. Darkness flooded the dock, a supernatural night that blocked out the city lights. Within that darkness, Varna became something more. A living embodiment of vampiric hunger, a presence so vast and terrible that even Alucard felt something like concern. "Now this is more like it." Alucard charged into the darkness. They collided in the center of the supernatural night, 2 beings of immense power tearing at each other. Varna's claws could shred steel. Alucard's regeneration brought him back from wounds that would have killed gods. They bit, clawed, and tore at each other while the Avengers fought the remaining vampires around them. "I have ended civilizations," Varna growled, his hands around Alucard's throat. "I have drunk the blood of heroes and kings. I am eternal." "Eternal is just another word for boring." Alucard's arm transformed into a massive blade of solidified blood and shadows, driving it through Varna's chest. "I've been eternal for 500 years, and let me tell you, it gets old." He twisted the blade, but Varna's ancient power held. The first vampire grabbed the blade with his bare hands and snapped it, then headbutted Alucard hard enough to crack the dock beneath them. "You cannot defeat me, young one. I am the source, the progenitor. All vampires spring from my line." "Then let me show you what happens when your bloodline meets mine." Alucard's body exploded into his true form, the culmination of 500 years of absorbed souls, millions of lives compressed into one being. The dock was flooded with spectral figures, an army of the damned that he'd consumed over the centuries. Level 0 release. Every soul Alucard had ever absorbed manifested simultaneously. World War II soldiers, medieval knights, ancient warriors, modern criminals, all of them attacked Varna at once, a tide of death that threatened to overwhelm even the first vampire. The Avengers stopped fighting, staring at the impossible sight. Is that... Steve couldn't finish the sentence. An army of ghosts, Tony said, his scanners going haywire. Each one reading as a separate entity. How is this possible? Magic, Thor said simply. Dark magic of a kind I have not seen in millennia. This Alucard is not merely a vampire. He is a prison of souls. Varna fought against the tide, his ancient power burning through hundreds of souls. But more kept coming. For everyone he destroyed, Alucard released 10 more. The first vampire was drowning in death itself. This is impossible, Varna roared. I am the first. I am eternal. And I, Alucard's voice echoed from a million throats, am the last thing you'll ever see. The army converged, and Varna vanished beneath a wave of supernatural fury. When it cleared, the first vampire was on his knees, his ancient armor shattered, his body broken. Alucard reformed, standing over the fallen progenitor. You know what the difference is between you and me? You clung to existence out of fear. You became a monster to avoid death. But I? He raised his gun, pressing it against Varna's forehead. I've spent 5 centuries looking for something strong enough to end me. And when I couldn't find it, I became strong enough to end everything else. Then do it, Varna snarled. End me. Prove you're the monster you claim to be. Alucard's finger tightened on the trigger. One shot, one blessed bullet through the brain of the first vampire, and an entire bloodline would shudder. It would be poetic. Fitting. Alucard. Steve's voice cut through the bloodlust. Don't. Alucard didn't turn. He's a monster. He's killed thousands. He'll kill thousands more if I let him live. Maybe. But you're trying to be something more than a monster, remember? Steve walked forward slowly, shield lowered. You've spent this entire week proving you can show restraint. Don't throw that away now. He's right, Natasha added. Kill Varna, and you're just another killer. Spare him, let HYDRA contain him, and you prove you're something different. Alucard was silent. The gun still pressed against Varna's head. Every instinct screamed to pull the trigger. Every soul within him cried out for violence. But he thought of Integra, of her commands, of how her restraints had given his violence meaning. He thought of Thor's offer, of fighting beside warriors instead of alone. He thought of the Ancient One's words about purpose versus power. Slowly, impossibly, he lowered the gun. SHIELD containment, he said. Maximum security. And if he escapes, I'm blaming you, Captain. Steve nodded, something like respect in his eyes. Fair enough. Varna laughed bitterly. Weakness. You had me at your mercy, and you showed weakness. No. Alucard holstered his weapons. I showed restraint. There's a difference. Weakness would be being unable to kill you. Restraint is choosing not to when you absolutely could. He looked at the Avengers. Get him out of my sight before I change my mind. As SHIELD containment teams arrived, specially equipped with UV weaponry and mystical binding equipment courtesy of the Ancient One, Tony flew down beside Alucard. That was quite a display. The whole Army of the Damned thing? Very impressive. Terrifying, but impressive. I contain multitudes, literally. Alucard watched as Varna was loaded into a specialized containment unit. HYDRA sent him. You know that, right? We figured, which means you've officially pissed off an international terrorist organization. Welcome to the club. Dues are quarterly, meetings are whenever Fury gets paranoid. Alucard smiled. I need to tell you something. About SHIELD, about Project Insight, about what HYDRA's really planning. Tony's expression sobered. I'm listening." Over the next hour, as cleanup crews secured the harbor and medical teams treated the wounded, Alucard told them everything. Every Hydra cell he'd identified, every compromised agent, every detail of Project Insight, the helicarriers equipped with targeting systems designed to eliminate threats preemptively, the algorithm that would identify anyone who could oppose Hydra's New World Order. "They're going to launch in 2 weeks," Alucard said. 3 helicarriers, each one capable of eliminating thousands of targets simultaneously. And once they're in the air, they'll assassinate anyone who could stop them. Scientists, politicians, heroes, anyone with the potential to be a threat. Fury, who'd arrived during the debriefing, looked like he'd aged 10 years. "You're certain?" "I've been in the heads of a dozen Hydra agents. I've seen their plans. I've watched them think about it while trying to kill me." Alucard met Fury's eye. "Your organization is compromised at the highest levels. Alexander Pierce, half your World Security Council, even some of your strike teams. That's quite an accusation. It's quite a conspiracy. But I have proof." Alucard pulled out a drive he'd prepared. "Every agent I've identified, every operation they're connected to, every piece of their plan, it's all here." Fury took the drive like it was a bomb. "If this is true, if it's true, you have 12 days to dismantle a terrorist organization that's been building inside your agency for 70 years. Alucard smiled grimly. "No pressure." Steve looked at the others. "We need to move fast. If Hydra realizes we know." "They already know," Natasha said quietly. "Alucard's been systematically destroying their operations all the week. They know we're coming." "Good," Thor said, Mjolnir crackling with electricity. "Let them prepare. It will make the battle more glorious." "You, as Guardians, have a weird definition of good news," Tony muttered. "But he's right. We know they're there. We know what they're planning. We have the element of surprise." "Do we?" Fury looked at Alucard. "You said 12 days. How do we know they won't move up their timeline?" "Because I made sure they think they still have the advantage. Every Hydra agent I encountered, I let them think I was a mindless monster, a threat to be eliminated rather than an intelligence gatherer." Alucard's smile widened. "They think they understand me. That's their mistake." Fury studied him for a long moment. "Your week's up. Time to make a choice. Are you with us? Or are we going to have a problem?" Alucard looked at the assembled heroes. Captain America, the living legend who'd chosen to do the right thing even when it cost him everything. Iron Man, the genius who turned his weapons into shields. Thor, the god who'd chosen to protect humanity despite owing them nothing. Black Widow and Hawkeye, weapons who'd chosen to become heroes. Broken people trying to do something good. "I'm in," he said. "But on my terms. I don't take orders. I don't wear a uniform, and I definitely don't do team-building exercises." "We don't do team-building exercises," Steve said. "We did that trust fall thing once," Tony interjected. "That was your idea, and it was terrible. See? We're already agreeing on things." Alucard extended his hand. "I'll help you take down Hydra. I'll defend this city from threats. But I'm not an Avenger. I'm a consultant, a very dangerous, very expensive consultant." Fury almost smiled. "We don't pay consultants." "Then I'm a volunteer, a very dangerous, very well-armed volunteer." Steve shook Alucard's hand. "Welcome to the team, sort of." "Sort of team," Alucard agreed. "Now let's talk strategy, because if we're going to dismantle Hydra in 12 days, we're going to need a plan, and probably several war crimes." "No war crimes," Steve said firmly. "Fine. Several aggressive applications of force that technically aren't war crimes because Hydra isn't a recognized nation state." That's better? Tony clapped his hands together. Great. We've got a vampire on the team, a Nazi conspiracy to unravel, and less than 2 weeks to save the world. This is going to be a disaster. Probably, Thor agreed cheerfully. But a glorious disaster. Alucard looked up at the sky, at the stars that were becoming familiar, at a universe that was starting to feel less foreign. He'd arrived in this world looking for purpose, for entertainment, for a worthy end. Instead, he'd found something more dangerous. He'd found a reason to keep fighting. And for a monster who'd spent 5 centuries looking for death, that was the most terrifying thing of all. The multiverse had shifted, and reality would never be quite the same. In the 12 days that followed, HYDRA fell and rose again. Hydra's grand conspiracy, 70 years in the making, was torn apart by a coalition of heroes, spies, and one very enthusiastic vampire who discovered that hunting Nazis was just as satisfying in this universe as it had been in his own. Project Insight's helicarriers never left the ground. Alexander Pierce died not in glorious battle, but in a HYDRA interrogation room, facing justice for his crimes. The Winter Soldier, another relic from another war, escaped into the wind, and Alucard made a mental note to track him down someday. Something about the assassin's eyes had reminded him of himself. New York's underworld learned to fear the night in ways they never had before. The Kingpin's empire contracted, forced to abandon entire territories rather than face the red-coated specter that stalked his operations. Daredevil found himself with an unlikely ally, one who operated on different moral grounds but toward similar ends. They didn't become friends exactly, but they developed an understanding. The Devil of Hell's Kitchen and the No-Life King, 2 monsters trying to protect the same city in their own broken ways. The Avengers expanded their definition of what a hero could be. Steve Rogers never fully trusted Alucard, but he respected the vampire's restraint and his willingness to fight for something beyond his own amusement. Tony Stark added vampire contingencies to his ever-growing list of doomsday protocols, while simultaneously inviting Alucard to movie nights in the tower. Thor returned to Asgard with tales of the warrior from beyond the 9 realms, and the All-Father listened with interest. Natasha and Clint kept their weapons ready, but their minds open. Bruce Banner sent regular emails requesting blood samples for study, which Alucard found endearing in a mad scientist sort of way. The Ancient One watched from her sanctum, satisfied. The dimensional anomaly had not become the catastrophe she'd feared. Instead, the vampire had proven that beings from beyond could integrate, could adapt, could choose purpose over chaos. She made a note to monitor him, power like his demanded vigilance. But she no longer planned for his elimination. Instead, she planned for his potential. Wilson Fisk reassessed his strategies and concluded that the vampire was too unpredictable to court and too dangerous to oppose directly. He focused on operations that wouldn't draw supernatural attention, built his empire more carefully, and privately admitted that competition from an unkillable monster had made him sharper, better, more cautious. He would never say it aloud, but in his own twisted way, he respected what Alucard had accomplished. And Alucard? He stood atop the Chrysler Building 3 weeks after his arrival, watching dawn paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The sun no longer burned him. He was too powerful, too ancient, too other for such simple weaknesses. But he'd spent 500 years as a creature of night, and old habits died hard. "You're brooding again," a voice said behind him. He didn't turn. He'd felt Natasha's approach. "I'm contemplating. There's a difference." She joined him at the edge, unafraid of the drop. "What are you contemplating?" "Purpose, meaning. Whether I made the right choice staying in this universe." He glanced at her. whether monsters can actually change or if we're just pretending. Does it matter? If the pretending leads to good results? Philosophically, probably. Practically. He smiled slightly. Maybe not. You saved a lot of people these past weeks. Stopped Hydra. Protected the city. That has to count for something. I did it because it was entertaining. Because it gave me something to do. That's not heroism, Natasha. That's a bored immortal playing games. Maybe that's all heroism is. Finding the right game to play. She looked out at the waking city. You could have conquered this world. You're powerful enough. Instead, you're protecting it. The reason matters less than the result. Alucard was quiet, processing this. In his old world, serving Integra had given his violence meaning. Here he'd found a different kind of meaning, not servitude, but alliance. Not orders, but choice. It was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Fury wants me for a mission, he said. Something in Eastern Europe. Vampire nest that's been terrorizing villages. Are you going? Probably. Might as well put my particular skill set to use. He stood, preparing to leave. Besides, I hear Romanian vampires are particularly pathetic. Should be amusing. Alucard. Natasha's voice stopped him. For what it's worth, I think you're more than a monster. Monsters don't question themselves. They don't show restraint. They don't choose to be better. Maybe I'm just a very self-aware monster. Or maybe you're something new. Something this universe hasn't seen before. She smiled slightly. Either way, try not to cause an international incident in Romania. No promises. He dissolved into shadows and vanished, leaving Natasha alone on the rooftop as the sun rose fully over New York. Somewhere in the city, crimes were being committed. Injustices were being perpetrated. Evil was flourishing in the spaces between laws and enforcement. And for the first time in 500 years, Alucard had a reason to care beyond simple entertainment. He wasn't Integra's weapon anymore. He wasn't the Hellsing organization's attack dog. He was something stranger, a monster choosing to defend instead of destroy. A being of ultimate power learning the value of restraint. An immortal discovering that existence could have meaning beyond finding a worthy death. The Marvel Universe had gained a protector it never asked for and probably didn't deserve. A creature from beyond reality who decided that this universe, with all its flaws and chaos and impossible heroism, was worth defending. Not because he was commanded to, not because he had to, but because, for the first time in half a millennium, he wanted to. And in the infinite expanse of the multiverse, where countless versions of countless worlds spun their own stories, that simple choice, the choice of a monster to be something more, rippled outward in ways that would echo across dimensions yet unexplored. The Ancient One felt it from her sanctum and smiled. Thor felt it from Asgard and raised a horn in salute. The Avengers felt it in their own ways and prepared for whatever came next. And Alucard, the no-life king, the vampire from beyond, felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Hope. Perhaps immortality wasn't a curse after all. Perhaps it was simply a very long story. And perhaps, in this new universe full of gods and heroes and monsters pretending to be men, his story was just beginning.